importance of what we're doing is actually, the end goal is seeing more missionaries out in the field. It is seeing nations change for the glory of God. We're never losing that from our eyes when we're doing this. And it's actually mobilizing people to do DTS so that they will be missionaries or transform their own nations, so that the earth will be covered with knowledge of the glory of God. That's our end goal. The good thing is that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And we are privileged that we get to learn and draw from lessons learned from people that have gone before us. And yesterday we heard him share the vision, why we do communications, and also his journey in that. And as it would just be interesting to hear back from you guys, to draw the line back from yesterday. What are you left with? What do you remember from yesterday? Yesterday's session?
Why we need to get out on the marketplace.
And what really stuck out to me was because of all those things, because they are important, that we need to have a test first.
But also just in general, as the same I still have a problem with young people as a do communication, but still makes sense on the right hand.
I just keep thinking about this idea that God gave the DTS to YWAM, and seeing this vision that Lauren had and desiring to see people coming and going to all the nations, and YWAM really didn't grow until the DTS started, until School of Evangelism. Like, that was sort of the trigger to growth, and seeing that happen and realizing, like, I'm just thinking about it from, I'm new to YWAM, thinking about the perspective of, like, what does it look like to see missions, happen and spread, and seeing how that played a part in our history and how it's still important today.
One of the things that I appreciate with his teaching is the holistic view of YWAM as a movement. We're not competing. It's not like Grimrud is trying to steal DTS students from Shem. It's not like we want to capture those who are going to Kona, Hawaii. It's not wrong to make them aware that we exist, but it's so much more people out there than just the, I think it's 250 Norwegians who do DTS every year. 30 of them do it in Norway. But there's so much more people. We have 800 high school graduates that are committed to do a Christian lifestyle during their last year of high school. And that's just the ones that make that public decision. There are still a lot of Christians around our nation, and that's just Norwegians. That the fish in the sea are far more than I think we realize. So that's why, we're not going to struggle hard to steal and compete with the other bases. What we hope is that what we learn will be a blessing to the DTSs in Norway. So that it's not only us that will see growth, but it will pour over, it will overflow. And when you start to think like that, then you get to see that we're actually seeing a tremendous growth and tremendous multiplication, not just for us, but for the other places as well. Yeah, just want to start with praying. This session is called Keys to Growth. Holy Spirit, we are just aware that it's you, God, who give growth. The growth doesn't come because of us, but we want to do our part. We want to be good stewards with what you give us, so that when we seek you first and lay down steward your gifts to us well. And we want to learn. So as we believe that you are here, make us aware of your presence. Make us aware of your heart in this. Let us see this with your eyes. And let us understand our part in this, both short term and long term. So that we can see more people get to know you. More radical believers in every nation of the world. Multiplying and growing in lively church in every nation, in every city, in every village. The vision is too great for us, but that's why we're not depending on our own strength, but we are depending on you. And we're not running in our own strength, but we're following wherever you lead. So I ask that you bless Daniel and give him the right words in the right time. That he can, both now as he shares now, he will have revelation from you. And I pray for our hearts that we will receive your words this morning. Amen.
For those of you that have been kind of in and out of different sessions that I've already done, there will be obviously like things that I've said that I'm saying again, but in the context of, hey, these are some of the keys that we've found for growth. And I will also make that comment. I mean, I call it keys to growth, but I hopefully picked that up from me yesterday, that these aren't Daniel's keys, like, that I figured out necessarily. And like, they're also, I want to highlight, this isn't like, oh, why don't Newcastle, Australia, here's our keys to growth. This has really been a journey of God speaking to, not just me, but a number of us about a way to see growth in our mission, and one that has been really fruitful. And I also say a way, because I also don't want to make this sound like these are the keys or the way for a YWAM base to grow. I'm not of that opinion. I think in our mission, in our movement, there's room and space, and I hope that there's others, and I know there are around our mission, that are innovating and creating new ways that are quite different even than the way that I'm doing it. There's, like he's mentioning, I know there's so much more growth that we're just scratching the surface of, and so we need other models, we need other keys. I was highlighting that yesterday too, with you, that you're going to be a part of, I know, like these other locations I've had the privilege of working with, unlocking new keys and new ways that we can grow. And so even when I started this journey working with locations, it was just, here's keys that come out of what we've done in Newcastle, but this is what you're hearing from me today. It's more of a combination of what I've learned and what we've learned as a collective group of locations. And we've seen that we do believe that if a location really owns it and really feels like that's something that God has for them to own as keys, that they will grow. We really have faith in that and seen that. So, so that's really what this morning is. And it's often, I've done it differently with different locations, but sometimes I'll share, like what you heard yesterday, sort of straight into sharing this, kind of in one big clump. And so this is kind of not different, but it's sort of a bit separate. So just keep in mind what yesterday still is the foundation of everything I'm kind of sharing right now. So I wanted to, this isn't necessarily keys to growth, but I wanted to, I got this from, my brother's the one that leads communications in Mazatlan, Mexico. I work really closely with him. He runs these sprints as well, and he shared this at, we had a leaders forum for what work we're doing that Christopher and Phil came to in Mazatlan a few months back. And he was sharing and presenting some of the growth and stuff they've been doing in Mazatlan. It's the first time I'd seen him often I'll share numbers and share growth and stuff in Newcastle, and even I'll share Mazatlan's numbers. And the last couple of days I've been showing some of the physical graph of some of the growth that Mazatlan's seen. And I was just struck by the impact of these photos that he showed, these slides, that it is a graph. It is a graph that shows growth, but it's the faces, it's the actual people. And it's kind of that reminder of this is kind of what we're doing. And one of what's been absolutely incredible about YWAM Mazatlan's growth has been the consistency of the growth over such a long period of time. I think they've gone something like, they went like 12 straight DTS's quarters over the last couple of years, with every single quarter being the largest DTS they'd ever run in that quarter. started, I might have started just before this. These are just a few photos of all those quarters. But this is starting September 2014. And so I started working with them just a little bit before that in 2014, and we started on this journey with them. And so that was their September, as you can see, their September DTS in 2014, and then you've got their January DTS in 2015, and then you can see their April DTS in 2015 right there on the beach. It's not to say, oh, they just didn't have a DTS. The other thing with that is they had a DTS schedule, I think for 3 straight years in their April quarter, but they had to cancel it because of lack of students. And so that year was actually an example of that again. They canceled it because they did not have enough students to run the DTS. Then you go to their July DTS in 2015, and then where you see the real growth. And so you can see, I mean, these are good-sized DTSs, but this next slide, we're trying to come up with a signal for when you go to the next slide. This is the next 4 quarters at Wyoming Muslim. And I mean, the biggest contrast, obviously, is that April. I mean, they're all, like, quite different. That is, in those 4 quarters, in that just a year difference, the amount of missionaries that are being trained. The next photo that he's got is 2 more. This is Wyoming Mazatlan's staff team at the start of that photo. So in 2014. The guy doing the kind of 2 little fists in the coffee-colored brown shirt, that's my brother Jordan. When he was earlier on, my sister-in-law somewhere in the middle there. That's Wyoming Mazatlan's staff. This is the next photo is their staff retreat. Just a few months ago. One of the, I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday. I know I have with some of the different sessions. One of the amazing transformations they've also seen. I mean, if you look really closely at this photo, you'll be able to tell is the number of Latinos that are being mobilized into missions. So even when you started, I think if you look, I didn't look that closely, but I'm pretty sure even in their earlier DTSs and even their staff, it was a very North American base. And their primary language was English. I remember my brother he was really working hard to learn Spanish, and everything was in English, and they were trying, there would be maybe a little bit of Spanish on some of their little signs somewhere. And, but now, primary is Spanish, and they're, everything, their worship, all this kind of stuff, and you can actually see their DTS is a really good mixture. They still have quite a lot of, they've seen a huge growth in North Americans and Europeans and other and Western nations being mobilized into missions there, which is awesome. But they've seen people from Colombia and Venezuela, and Costa Rica, and all around the Latino world. And so, and that's shown in this photo. And even in their communications team, it's like a 50-50 mixture of native Spanish speakers from Mexico and from Colombia. Colombia seems to be one of the bigger ones they have, as well as native English speakers from America and Canada, and Europe, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I just thought I could show that before I kick off this morning. But I love that. I got him to send that to me because I was like, oh, I really want to show this. I just love it's not just some numbers on a sheet. It's what I'm talking about. These are people, but they're numbers, right? That's a number. I can tell you that. That was 30 staff to now 80 something or 90 or whatever. Well, no, there's a group of people in missions, and there's a bigger group of people in missions making an impact in that city and to the nations. So, cool. Well, like I said, these are keys. It's funny. I think I purposely don't number these because so I actually have no idea how many there are that I am even sharing today. I could count, but I probably have before, but I don't. Because I don't want to make it seem like these are steps or just tips to success sort of thing. They can kind of go in all different orders. These are just main thing. If you own these things and start to walk these out, I believe you'll see growth. And this first one, it's up there. Trust God for the growth. I used to make this my last one because I want to finish on it. But greatest at time management. I'm getting better, but what time are we finishing today?
This session?
Yeah,
10.
10. Okay, I'll do my best. That's why this is not at the end. Because I kept finding myself kind of getting to the end, and like maybe the last one or two, I kind of have to I want to make sure I say them and share them, but I kind of like cram it in and make it really quick. And so I felt sometime last year or something on one of the sprints, I really felt challenged and provoked to make this the first one, because this one is key to all of it. And I think I think especially for communicators, it is for all of us, but as communicators and people who we're doing stuff online, digital marketing, social media, data and analytics and numbers and all this communications work that's bringing growth and stuff, it's very easy for us to fall into a trap that, look what we've done. Look at and to be impressed with ourselves and impressed, look what we can do on our own strength. And I know time and time again over these number of years of growth, none of that would have happened without us depending on God for the growth. Even in our first year, this was pretty much, and thank God this happened, it was our first lesson really we learned in Newcastle. Because we were striving and working and doing stuff and really cool stuff, and even seeing growth in the technical work we were doing. We were seeing more people inquiring and applying for schools than ever before in Newcastle. We were really we were doing a good job. But we weren't seeing the growth that God had been speaking to us about. We still weren't really cracking anything. There wasn't much happening. And so that was frustrating for us. And we felt very challenged by this, that hey, we really, really need to press into God and ask Him for the growth. It's God who brings the growth. And we, in that time, felt, that's where we worked really hard. We were provoked to really press in prayer and fasting like never before as a team. So not just to do the physical, but to really press in the spiritual for the growth. And so even as a communications team, and this also then included our training team, the DTS leaders, the DTS staff, we started basically taking different lunch times and other times during the week to just go into a room and pray and fast. Pray for these students that were applying. Call people into missions. So not just be on the phones and call people, and not just make ads and do Facebook and do Instagram and all that stuff, but actually go to the one who's going to bring the growth. And get on our knees and say, no, God, we're just here to partner with you. We're doing what we can to steward what you've called us to do, but ultimately we know this is not possible without you. And we want to do the impossible.
That's true.
And with God, that is possible, as we know. And so all these other keys I say, if you do all those other keys, obviously without this one, this is the most important one. I know you know this. I'm not trying to say I'm teaching you this. I'm not coming from that position. I'm even in me saying this, and the reason I have it in there is to remind myself of this every time I teach it. It's so easy for me to come into the office or to come to a sprint and be I can do this on my own strength. I've got here's the tips, here's the stuff we do. Let me help you. I can get on here and help you work out Facebook ads, and I can help you do all this stuff and make it all work, and you will grow. And to an extent, I can do some of this on my own strength, but it will never be anywhere near the growth that I know God wants. Can we make things grow on our own strength? Sure, I'm not saying we can't. I've done really cool things that have grown on my own strength. But the growth that we've seen in those photos you're seeing came because God brought the growth and God did miracles. And it was during this season of intense fasting and prayer as a team that literally within a month, things just cracked and turned, and we saw our largest DTS in history in Newcastle, Australia. After going quarter after quarter of still okay DTSs, but they were just what we'd already run before. They weren't a record. We weren't going for a record to win a medal. We were going for a record because that's what we believed God was calling us to, mobilize more people. And getting the same amount of DTS students is not more people. And so we were fighting for that. And not just working longer hours and trying to get more clever at communications. And so I think and like I said, even in Newcastle and across our locations, this is a constant battle, and we need to remind ourselves, and I need to personally, but then as our teams, that we don't just need a communication strategy, we need a faith in God strategy in it. Even with, say, Facebook or Instagram, like, do you, I know many of you know Joseph Avakian. I know he comes through and teaches, and he's just an awesome guy with a lot of wisdom, especially in this area of communications. I've always been challenged by him on this topic in this area, because he kind of, I remember he was in Newcastle teaching, and he shared this picture basically that's always stuck with me, that, like, do you, like, sit at your computer in the morning and, like, he kind of was like, oh, I put my hands over the keyboard and say, like, okay, Lord, use me today, like, I want you to lead every keystroke and everything I do, versus just open the computer and start working, and writing your emails and creating your ads and stuff. Where the Holy Spirit wants to actually work through us, and even in things like a Facebook ad, or writing a tweet or something, versus doing it on our own strength. And so we need this in our teams as well as individually. Like, how are we actually stopping? Like, do you have a prayer and fasting strategy as much as you do with this? So, anyways, that's Trust God for the Growth. Also in Spanish, if any of you speak Spanish, there it is.
Confiar en Dios, porque
Thank you.
Crecimiento.
He got quite fluent when he was there. Does anyone speak Spanish in here? I don't. No matter how much time I've spent there, I haven't spent that much time there, but I was just there for 2 months. My brother's excellent, he's fluent. But I'm not very good with languages, and I've never been in a place to learn. Anyways, number 2, but not numbered, number 2 key is create a foundation of feedback. And this has been one we've kind of been exploring the most so far already with the team. We're continuing to do. When I first joined communications, it was kind of, even for myself, it was easy to kind of like want to just leap into, oh, let's get social media cranking, and let's make videos, and let's start communicating, right? And I quickly realized, and this is through a number of, as I was starting to learn, and we had different teachers teaching on it, we had started running a school of communication foundations in Newcastle, and so we had a few really amazing teachers that came through and taught on communications, and really getting revelation of what communications is, because I think there's it is a really vague term, right? It was just to speak and talk, it's just saying a message, like, what is communications? But I say that communications is like, at its core, like, to actually communicate, to be a communicator, is, in order to do that, it requires feedback and response to what you're doing. So a lot of social media, a lot of our communicating is not actually communication. Posting something on Instagram is not necessarily communication. Sending an email to someone is not communication. That's why email is one of the worst mediums of communication. It can be if you get a response and get feedback to it. And I think as communicators, like, especially, and I love working with any form of creative on this, whether it's a musician or a videographer or photographer or any kind of artist, because often it's like we create and we just kind of put it online, and therefore we're a communicator. We're not actually knowing, is our message being heard? Like, is the intended message being heard? And are we getting feedback on it? Do we know what is happening? And I remember as we started, like I highlighted yesterday, we honed in on focusing on how we recruit to DTS and the emphasis on DTS with communications. Understanding that, okay, if as communicators, our main message, like for us and what we're doing here, is to mobilize more people into missions, what is the response we're after? It's not rhetorical. If you as a communicator are called to, like, your message is mobilize people into missions, what's the response you are after? What does that look like? Yes.
Relationships.
It equals DTS students physically being in this seat in front of you. That's a response. You are not a communicator
that actually happens. And so, but I think for many communicators in YWAM, we're doing a lot of stuff, we're creating, but we're not necessarily getting the response. But there's another piece to this, which I'm going to share my favorite communications quote of all time. And this has to do with in social media, all the stuff we're doing. Like, so we're creating a video, and there is a DTS student on the seat, so therefore we're a communicator. No, you're not a communicator unless there's feedback that had something to do with what you're doing. That's communications. Communications is when you put a video out there, a person gives you feedback and responds to it and ends up sitting in that seat. That's communication. I mean, it's also communication if they say, no, I really don't ever want to sit in that seat. So it's not about a positive response always as well. But you're obviously successful at communicating if they respond in the intended way. And so my favorite all-time communications quote is by George Bernard Shaw. And I think this is more relevant, like it becomes more relevant in the world of social media. This hits this hard. It says, the problem with communication is the illusion that it has been accomplished. So as communicators, we upload a video to YouTube. Therefore, I have communicated. I've sent an email, therefore I have communicated. But you haven't. You've started a process. You've started to communicate, but you haven't actually communicated. And so this is what this really lays the foundation of what has made a lot of this successful with a lot of Y1 bases. Because you have to have this foundation of feedback and response and within your communication in order to grow, to be effective communicators. And we, in Newcastle, I wanted to, like I said, leap in and do what I thought was communication, which was post on social media and create ads or make videos or take photos. But I remember being challenged on this, like, actually I need to, and so I spent the first year and a half kind of doing things I didn't necessarily love to do, whether it was like building certain kinds of web pages and figuring out contact forms and figuring out Salesforce, which any of you who touch Salesforce know is not fun. And bless it, it's been a gift to the mission too, so I do like it, but I choose not to use it anymore. But working out Salesforce, working out all these different platforms, all these things, to somehow figure out a way that when we work and put a message out there, can we receive feedback to know that when a response comes, that it had anything to do with that original message and the work we were doing. I remember we were sitting with early on in communications, we had who's been an incredible communications leader in our mission as well, Ken Mulligan, the director of YWAM Townsville, YWAM Medical Ships in Australia. He was kind of sharing this about their communications and about online, especially social media and online advertising and stuff. He's using the picture of money, and it's to do with real money, but also money is just investment as well, your time or anything, or your videos. It's all kind of money, you could call it. And he kind of said, it's like, a lot of this communication, what we think is communication, we're kind of like taking, say, a wad of cash, $10,000, throwing it up in the air. It all kind of flutters out there and lands on the ground, and something good happens. So you could spend $10,000 worth of your time and money and energy on trying to communicate to people to do a DTS. And these seats might all fill up. And you then pat yourself on the back. I was a good communicator, right? Because you got the response you were after. But what if all those seats filled up because of something else that happened over there? Some event that was run, or Andreas went and told this group, went to a church, spoke at that church, and everyone just responded, and they shut the church down. They all came to do the DTS for some reason. So they're all sitting there doing a DTS. But Phil's over there going check me out. Not that Phil would do that, but it's he's like, my video, my promo video that I made was successful. And you would feel good with that unless you knew that, and you were getting feedback, you had a way to know, was that group actually a response to the communications that you were doing? Do you have systems of feedback to know that that is the case? even if one of those students that are sitting in there came from that $10,000 of energy, which would be quite an expensive way to get one student, knowing which of that, say they're $100 bills or $5 bills or something floating around on the ground, to know which of that actually created that, which video. So you created 100 videos over a year, and one person came because of your videos, but you don't know what video. What did you do? And so as I said, this is what I probably spent most of my time doing for the last 6 years. It's been trying to not figure out, but lay as good of a foundation of feedback as we possibly can in our communications, in our systems, and what we're doing. But it's what I spent probably 80 or 90% of my time doing for the first year and a half in Newcastle. Stuff I didn't necessarily love to do, but I'm not like, oh, I want to be the biggest expert at Salesforce. I just love it. No, I did it because I knew the importance of it, where I was feeling challenged to it. I was learning the importance of it. I didn't think that way. To get to the point where when we trusted God for the growth and we saw this breakthrough, when those students showed up, this first big DTS, it was 50 students. They're all sitting there in that room that I could go around and say, oh, Christopher came on this DTS because of that Instagram post that we did. Andreas came because we sent that tweet a year ago. And Phil came because he loves Pinterest and he was scrolling and trying to find these really pretty cute things to deck out his new house he's moved into.
That's right.
Each one of those stories are true, not with them, but with actual people. Like, we have people in Newcastle, that person came because of that and to know that it was the communications work that we had committed our lives to do, that God had called us to do. Knew we were being good stewards of our time. Like, for me to give up an entire year of my life and get to the end of the year and go, like, none of the students came because of anything I did. That's not in order to make myself feel good, but I'm just saying, like, I'm not doing a very good job of what God had called me to do. That's not what God called me to mobilize people into missions. So I want to get better. I want to do that as best as I can. And I want to learn how to do it as best I can. I was talking yesterday about the power of a moment of communication. It is, and I've shared a few of these stories with the team over the last couple of days. Like, there are people that, like, and it still blows me away, and all of our team in communications, this isn't just stuff that I've done, but I know for me, these stories, this is what blows me away. I'm sitting there in my office and having real people, like this guy Darren, a few years back, who would come and barge into my office and just be like, Daniel, I just want to thank you again, because a year ago you sent me that tweet, and I'm here because of that. And he was. I know the whole, I'm not going to share the whole story now, but it wasn't just he saw some random tweet. We tweeted to each other about, it was a specific thing. It was because I took a moment. Now, a tweet is, like I said, this was probably the easiest recruit I ever did. Like, a tweet doesn't take very long to do. So I'm like, I didn't do that much, but I still communicated, right? That moment, that tweet changed this young man's life. I didn't change his life, and the tweet didn't, is what I'm saying, but it changed the course of his life, and God was changing his life during that DTS that came out of that moment of communication. And I knew it did, because I was getting feedback, both from him and from our systems and everything, to know that the message, the tweet that I sent had gotten a response. I'm like, I'm a communicator now. Now, becoming a communicator is not my goal, but having my message heard is, and getting a response was. And it's amazing too, because this guy still loves the Lord. He was experiencing the Holy Spirit for the first time on his DTS, and he was sharing with me about he'd never heard the voice of God before, and all this stuff, like he was in a relationship with the Lord. And now I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it's his older, I'm pretty sure it's his older sister, is now, because of what God did in his life and seeing that, she ended up joining YWAM and is on staff, I think, in Fire and Fragrance in Kona. So you think of, like, we were talking about this the other day, it's like, you've got family trees. I'm always fascinated in, like, communications trees. Like if that message, that conversation didn't happen, that tweet didn't happen, and what happened, like, it's amazing what you can see, like, what one tweet could do that you never know. He could be the next Lord Cunningham or something, this wave of missions happens. Like, I have to be a part of that. That's awesome. The fact that I quickly signed up and set up a Pinterest account for YWAM Newcastle. We're pinning quotes and blog posts and little videos and stuff. Like, that could sound silly, but we had people come because they were on Pinterest searching for other things, and they were considering YWAM or missions, and they were typing in some words to search, and there were our pins. If you know what a pin is. And we had feedback to that, because when they filled out contact forms, and so our contact forms, our web pages, I'm not going to I get into the technical with them, of how it tracks all that, how it does all that, that we know at the end of the day, when they come, we can look up in Salesforce and say, oh, they came because of that tweet and that ad or that thing. My sister-in-law is married to an English guy. He came and did the DTS, and that's how they met, because of an ad that I created. So therefore, I'm responsible for their marriage. Feedback. My message isn't to get people married, but that's cool too. So some residual or bonuses, little perks. There's a few people like that at YWAM Newcastle. I'm like, I know from back years ago, and I know I can bring them up in Salesforce and see they came because that ad that I created. I'm like, now they're married and they're doing this cool stuff. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, it's a really fun, cool job. I can talk about this for the longest time, but I got to manage my time, right? We also, another big key within this, with creating a foundation feedback, we have which will give you our template. You can create your own kind of version of that, but it's also creating a really good arrival survey for students to fill out to get more information. This isn't just simply asking people, like, how did you hear about YWAM? It's asking people that you've got to ask the people the right questions of the right kind of systems. I'll just quickly highlight, this is on the element of feedback, and it's kind of tying in, because you can also think you're getting feedback, but you're not. And one of the most common, I think, within YWAM mistakes we made in gathering feedback is the question, how did you hear about YWAM? We need to stop asking that question. It doesn't do communications any good. Now, I'll qualify that really quickly. What I mean by that is, let's say you're a DTS in here, and I said, how did you all hear about YWAM? In most cases, in a lot of DTSs, a huge percentage of them would say, a friend told me about YWAM. How many in this room, a friend told you about YWAM originally? That's not a huge percentage in here, but in a lot of DTSs, that is the case. Word of mouth is one of the most common reasons people do YWAM. So you could go, well, if that's the case, if all of you came because a friend told you, what is the point of everything I'm even doing this week? Why would you do ads? Why would you do social media? Why would we even do communications? There's no point. Like, you all came to YWAM. No one comes to YWAM because of a Facebook ad, right? But I asked, how did you hear about YWAM? I didn't ask, how and why did you come to YWAM Greenroot in Norway? Because I'm not saying this is your story, but globally in YWAM, this is the case, and this is there's an Australian leader that's involved in the U event called Mark Brokenshire, awesome guy. He has this quote. He says, like, most people hear about YWAM because a friend tells them, but they decide where to go on the internet. So more and more today, a friend will tell you about YWAM, but then you'll jump on the internet and make a decision on where you're going to do YWAM. You don't necessarily do it where they do YWAM. So this isn't why once again, he was talking about, we're not trying to, like, get people to choose our base, that kind of thing that comes later in this talk, but it's making sure we're asking the right questions. So even within our arrival surveys, we really try to dig. We try to say, like, oh, a friend told you? Were they an alumni, or did they do a past DTS with us? Like, how did you hear about us? And then also, why did you choose us too? And then in those surveys is where we've gotten really good feedback on the fact that it was these phone calls that we make, which will also come later. That is the #1 reason why people choose us. So they discover us because of the internet, Pinterest or something, but they choose us because of the phone call and the relationship. Not because the cool website or we're the cheapest DTS ever, which we're not. Those things just, they actually really don't matter. And that's what our surveys, the feedback is set. So we have these surveys that we work really hard on. And we even, like, if the surveys are a little unclear, we'll go follow up with students and we'll try to find these things out. It's like the Pinterest people, there's a few different people from Pinterest. One of them was, I remember over fireplace. I was just around a fire, we're at our annual retreat, and I asked them, and they said, oh yeah, a friend told me. And I kind of dug deeper, and that's where I found out that a friend didn't tell them about Newcastle. They didn't even know Newcastle was a city in the world. But it was, they were one day sitting on Pinterest, and they searched, and they found us. And I was like, oh, okay, that's feedback, getting response. I think there's anything more on that? Yep, that's good. Next one. Oh, this is still the same one. I'll quickly show this. Sorry, I don't have my slides in front of me. We have, and we're going over this and setting this up with Warren Brewery. We have one of the foundational pieces of feedback that we have is a monthly report that's measuring some of this information for us on an ongoing basis. We were going over this yesterday. This is sort of a little excerpt from one of those reports years ago in Newcastle, and this has to do with why getting feedback is so important as a communicator, because you can actually make changes and adjust and go, what's going on? You can actually ask the question because you're like, oh, things aren't going the way I want. What's going on? You can ask the question yourself, and you can ask God that question too. Something He'll highlight it too. We've had those times where we needed to be like, okay, God, we have no idea what's going on, and something changes. So the red bars that you're seeing are how many DTS applications are coming in each month at Warren Newcastle a bunch of years ago. So you got January, February, March, all doing really well at that time. Something happened in April where it plummeted. So we saw hardly any applications coming that month. The little blue dot line is how many phone calls, successful phone calls, our team had been making to people. So we're calling all these people that are inquiring about DTS, and then they're like, yeah, I'd love to do it, and they apply. And so we've seen the huge impact that those calls have had on how many people apply for our DTS. So that's happening well at the start. But what do you notice about April, about the phone calls that doesn't make sense? They're actually really high. So we made a lot of phone calls, but our applications were awful. And we're going there scratching our heads going, this doesn't make sense. Why would the application numbers plummet if we're making phone calls? Because we're getting this feedback, we're asking the question, it's on our monthly report. And we go in, we're talking to our guys on the phone, on the team, and saying like, oh, how's it going? Like just trying to get some feedback from them, and trying to figure out. And they're like, yeah, things are going well, and so they're calling a lot of people. I'm like, yeah, we know we're calling a lot of people. Like, so we're just kind of like, how are the phone calls going? Because maybe it's the inquiries that are coming through maybe aren't that qualified, maybe not that interested for some reason. Like we're not like trying to go in and say it's their fault. We don't know where this is coming from or what's going on. And it started to come out from the team that they were like, there's just been so many inquiries coming through, we felt a bit overwhelmed at the volume and the amount of phone calls we had to make. And so what they started to do was make faster phone calls and make them more. They tried to get more efficient at making phone calls. And they dropped, which I'm going to talk about coming forward, they dropped a really key piece in our phone calls, which we teach and train all of our callers to do at the time, which has to do with praying for people on the phone. And so they just basically turned into these quick little info calls about what a DTS is. Do you have any questions about DTS? Oh yeah, this is what a DTS is? Okay, cool, bless you, goodbye. That's what the phone call. It's not quite like that. It would have been better call. But because they obviously stopping and praying with someone and hearing if they have any needs to pray for would take extra time, they wanted to get to the next phone call, they stopped doing that. So they made the same amount of phone calls, actually a bit more, but the difference. This is something that we had learned over the years that made our phone calls different, that we wanted to make sure it was a value to us, that we taught our guys, but they decided to change that without saying anything. And I understood, we get why, so we just encourage them, like, no, that's really important to us, that's a value, we want to keep doing that. And don't worry about, like, you just steward how many calls you can make. Like, don't worry how many inquiries are coming in, that's our fault. Like, just do what you can. Like, we're not expecting you to get to everyone. You just make really good phone calls, have good conversations, and steward what you have. So they did that. And what happened in May? They made a few less phone calls, but the applications went skyrocketed back up. So once again, this does highlight that power of prayer and phone calls, but the more thing I'm highlighting here is why feedback is so important. Because we can address stuff and we can look at it. It holds us accountable. black and white. Not everyone likes that, but it's like, hey, I love it. And I'm going to share a bit more of that later on, too. Why, even sometimes I get excited when things happen like that. I'll talk about that at the end. Okay, next one. Okay. I used to have this kind of almost as 2 points, but this has to do with, it says invest and take risks. And this has to do with people, but it also has to do with finances and resources. This does take, I was saying this yesterday, this does take real people focusing, investing their lives into this. It does take real money. It's like every YWAM base I work with, it's like, I think it's easy, this isn't a YWAM problem, I'm saying that. This is even just whether it's a nonprofit or a charity, or we're always trying to do, it's maybe a bit of a poverty mentality, we're just trying to do stuff as cheap and free as we possibly can, in like the least amount of time as we can, kind of thing.
Just on the previous slide, I'm just thinking, are people buying our products? Or are people thinking, I want to spend time with these people? Like you're saying, you started to pray for them. And then people that you talked with on the phone, they say, oh, I would like to spend time with these people.
It's both, yeah.
They
Definitely
really,
it's both.
really care.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit when I address phone calls. Some of the importance of phone calls. And okay, so that so then investing like this. I said this even coming in. I think it was one of the first things I said to the team. I don't come to a location and make your lives easier. I'm here to make your lives harder. I don't want to sugarcoat it. Key to growth in communications is to work really hard. I love that you guys run a farm here, because the key to get a big harvest is that's a lot of hard work, right? You can't, there's no like shortcuts, I'm sure with farming. Yes, you can get better at it, there's ways, efficiency things, I'm sure. I don't know much about farming, but I'm just saying, like, you can't throw on a magic seed over there and all of a sudden, poof, you get this huge thing. I think we're all waiting, we kind of wish we could farm and not do any work, just get the food. That's why most of you don't farm, you just go to the supermarket and buy it, right? With communications, it takes real tilling and sowing seeds and working, and it takes a lot of time and energy. This is why we need to build teams around it. We need to actually invest in it. We need actually quality equipment. We need to, when we're looking and thinking about what web platforms to use and things like, we need to be willing to. It doesn't just mean we get the most expensive thing, so we spend lots of money. I'm not saying that. We've got to be good stewards of that, but we're looking for quality. We're looking for what's going to be the best thing, because our message is worth the best. And it is. It's worth it. It's also worth our best people, too. It's like, it's not just something we, like, find someone, like, oh, no offense if there's an 18-year-old in here, this isn't about age or anything, but I'm like, it's kind of like, who's the Instagram-savvy 18-year-old? Let's just get him to run communications, because he's young, kind of thing. And they are awesome to be part of communications, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it takes more than it takes. It does take actual leadership, it does take experience, you don't just have to be the best at Instagram, like it takes a lot of investment. And from you, it's going to take, even if you're not part of Phil's team and doing physical, it's going to take you, the DTS leaders, the DTS staff, and the base. You're going to actually have to invest. If you think YWAM Green Group can be successful with you sitting on the sideline, no matter what your role is, and never really being involved in it, you're kidding. Almost every single staff at YWAM Newcastle has actually served at one point in communications. Because it's such a critical, integral part of our ministry. They haven't necessarily done a 1 or 2 year stint working in our department per se, but they maybe worked in the call team as part of DTS staff. Everyone has been involved. It's an all-in YWAM Newcastle. It's a community thing. It's not that team over there. It takes real investment to do it. And that's what we've done. We don't always love talking about money maybe in the ministry context, but we also spend a lot of money. For some of you, I would tell you some of the budgets, the locations I work with, it would probably blow your mind. but it's worth the investment. We're mobilizing people in missions. We're not running a business. We're not trying to make more money, all that kind of stuff. We're not but investing our resources and mobilizing people in missions is worth it. And it's proven to be worth it. That's why we keep spending more money or increasing our budgets and stuff like that. Because it does cost money to do things well. It costs money to build a building, right? It costs money to farm. Like, you could buy a $100 tractor, I'm sure, maybe somewhere. Could you farm with it? Probably not. You probably wouldn't make it to the field. Some of the, I'll talk about later on, like some of these harvesting tractors cost like $1 million. They're mental. Like, it's crazy. They get them because it's what you need to get a harvest that size, the capacity kind of thing. So don't try to you can't expect a harvest like this, but try to do it like with nothing. Phil's got it by himself with his camera and his vlog, and he's got it taken care of. You can't expect that. Could God do that? Totally. And once again, I'm not saying that. But what this has been a key for us is that we've been willing to take that risk and invest and go for it and leap into it, even though, like I said, even for me in my own life, I took that leap and that risk. But like, I don't know what's going to happen or what's going to do. Like, we have to just go for it. And I think, especially with people, I didn't do my Twitch, sorry. I was mentioning this yesterday as well, like this, it's very easy, I think, and this comes back to the, like, why we emphasize DTS and communications over other ministries. And like I said, it's like, it's not because it's more important, it's because your ministry is important. But with this investing of people, especially, and money, and our time and energy, and say for a while base to invest heavily in this, it's sometimes easy to get into comparison and be like, or like, no, I don't want to lose one of my staff to that team, that kind of thing. I'm constantly having these conversations, and even in my own wild bases over the years, it's like, we don't have enough people to do communications and be on the phones. We don't have enough people to like take over here, because we don't have enough people work, say the kitchen, for example, or something. We don't have enough people to have the communications because there's not enough people in the kitchen. But we don't have enough people in the kitchen because we don't have enough people in communications. So this is the cart before the horse things. I don't know if that's the right way to say that phrase, but where I think within YWAM, it's like, even when like I said, I worked with a pioneering team, it's like, you can launch yourself into ministry and the doing and all of this stuff, and you can easily put the cart before the horse. So even in this room, you could keep doing the cart over here and leave the horse back here. And you're going to be stuck forever you're going to be thinking to yourselves and your different teams, I can't sacrifice, even for you yourself, could even be GTS leaders and staff, I can't sacrifice my time to help this communications and make these phone calls. You may not be saying that at all, I'm just saying, I deal with this all the time, with everyone on base, and you will deal with it in some way. It may not be you as an individual, but I know you will deal with this, where there'll be a tension of, I can't sacrifice my own time or any of my team members' times, because I don't have enough people to do my ministry, to run my big event coming up, or to run my school, or something like that. But remember, you don't have enough people to run your event, your school, because communications doesn't have enough people. So sometimes it takes sacrifice, even for just a season. And that's what it took for Newcastle. We had to invest, we had to risk that, we had to sacrifice. Like U Street, it still was a sacrifice for it to lose me, because I was one of the main leaders and staff of U Street. So they still did lose me, and people had to pick up the slack, and other people had to join. Like, it still wasn't the same without me. But I did that for the sake of communications. So that's what it comes back. Maybe for some of you, it might be that whatever your role is now, may be that you spend 3 months or 6 months or a year serving in communications and helping to make these phone calls and do some of this work. Whereas you might, rightfully there's a tension there, but what about my ministry or the thing I'm doing? I can't sacrifice the time, there's not enough people to do it. So it's that, and I get that tension, I get that you need to wrestle that. I'm not saying it's easy, but just do it, it's easy. pioneering location I worked with so successful is because their team of 7 invested and spent most of their energy and time on communications. They became the communications team because they wanted to start their ministry off with this as a foundation. That's why they have lots more staff now, and why they get really large DTSs, every single DTS. And so they've got the people.
Can I just say one thing quick? We are running until 10 o'clock, but if you want coffee, we have made coffee. But we'll just continue listening to Daniel until 10. But grab a cup of coffee if you want one. Do you like one? Industrialized life.
There's some great.
I was about to say I'd love one, but I'll just say I'd like one.
You take one.
Or I'd take it.
Hollywood.
I'll still feel blessed by it. I'm blessed by your hospitality, you know.
Yo.
Okay, next one. And I'm sorry, I know even during this time, because of the time, even the time constraint with it as well, like, and I didn't say this at the start, I usually do, like, it's not, this is like the one session where I am just going to plow through it and share it all, and there's, like, as much, I know you might have continued questions, like there's already any points. In this, what I want to encourage you to do is, like, to write those down and hold on to them, because that's part of. If this was all I was coming to do was share this with you right now, I'd want to make sure there was time for feedback and questions, and if we had extra time, I would do that. But we do, it's called the whole week that I'm here. That's what we're doing all week. So the idea of this time is to spark that going into future sessions and times where we're in more informal discussions. Okay? So if you have the burning question or itching to say something, like, just write that down so you don't forget it. Because I do want to address it. I do want to discuss it with you as an individual or a team. So, I want to make sure I said that I'm not like, I am committed to answering questions. This just can't be the time. Okay, make it easy for people to join you. This kind of has 2 parts to it within communications. I find a lot of our communications, or as communicators, whether we're videographers or photographers or callers, and this isn't just communications, I think in a lot of our ministry, I don't think this is deliberate, and I'm not against this, you're saying it's always a bad thing. It's obviously a good thing in some ways. Is we design a lot of it around, and because it's easiest, more natural to us, where we're communicating more as if we are our own audience. Like our message is mostly designed around what's comfortable and easy for us. Our systems are often designed around us, not our audience. And so, whether it's our websites or our application processes or the phone calls we're making, our schedules are often designed around us. When we've really stopped, when I've done that as a communicator and Newcastle, our teams, we've really stopped and gone, why do we do it this way? Why is our schedule like this? Or why do we phrase it that way? Or why do we use this platform, or why do I prefer to video in this format and stuff like that? It's not often primarily, and actually very rarely, sadly, especially as communicators, has to do with our audience. And this is, I have to use the video example not as a comment to Phil. I love videographers. But this is a current example for me that kind of is just clearly communication, has to do with video. That often we create video in a format and put it on a platform that we as the videographer prefer, that looks the prettiest and we like the most. Videographers love their video to look at the highest possible quality. They like it to be nice, like cinematic, really widescreen looking, all this kind of stuff. But guess what? Our audience doesn't care. They don't care that much about the quality, and the audience also doesn't really like, let alone care, that it's really long and skinny when looking at it on their phone. What format do young people watch their videos in? Vertical. That makes a videographer cringe. I know this myself. Like that camera that's filming me right now is this way, not this way. But how do young people actually consume messages and content? Where do they do it? On the phone. So So we're often making it more difficult than it needs to be for people to join us, to respond to the messages that we have. Because they're scrolling through Facebook or Instagram, and there's this tiny little slither that's a video with little tiny people in it, and you're like, and I'm sorry, it's just too hard to do this. I've kind of even stopped doing that. Like, even when it's a skinny video, I'll just watch it like this, because I just can't be bothered. Unless it's a 10-minute video, which is too long. So I'm like, no. Like, I'm exaggerating a bit, but at the same time, the exaggeration is just too true. But when I look around at the videos being published and the content being published, that's not being considered as much. It's being considered by major brands and corporations who are taking their message seriously. I'm not saying we copy those brands but they get it, because who do they care about? They care about their audience receiving their message. Their message is junk, but I often talk about, like, I've been so fascinated in studying companies like Red Bull and GoPro, and I've followed this journey. One of my close friends spent 6 years working in marketing with Red Bull and then 6 years working with GoPro, so it's kind of been this journey I followed with him, but then also in my work in communications that I've been fascinated by. And Red Bull is selling sugar water junk, but they're amazing at communication and media. They're basically a media company. Now, GoPro's not selling sugar water, so it's a little bit better, but it's like they care about their message and the response. And do young people drink that stuff? Yes. Coca-Cola, all these things. Anyway, I don't want to go on a rabbit hole. I teach on that on separate topics within communications, but it's this idea that we as communicators we often are actually making it harder for people to join us than we think. If we really take time to stop and go, is the way that I'm communicating making it easier or harder for people to join? We'll often find a lot of what we do is making it harder. This can go to, we talked a little about this the other day, this can go to the use of language within our websites and our social media, acronyms. The acronym DTS is great. It's Chinese to the world. Now, I'm not commenting on the acronym YWAM because I think that's a broader brand in a sense, in a way. So I don't mind that. Like that, you can use that. It's like YMCA. But DTS, like, it doesn't communicate. If you say do a DTS to a young person, do a what? Unless it's obviously someone who already knows about YWAM. But we're trying to mobilize more people in missions. So using do a DTS doesn't mean anything. It's Chinese. So our language. Do a saturate DTS. What does that mean? I said, it's a really good name. It's not a comment on the name. You can keep that name. I'm not saying don't keep that name. It's a great name. It's how you then communicate that, even that name, to a generation out there. You have to change. You have to tweak. You have to be willing to adjust, because the message is not for me. Doesn't mean you change the message, you just change its shape, change its language. When you go as a missionary to China, you're not going to change the words of the gospel, but you do change the language, right? You're not changing who Jesus is, but you do have to speak it in a different language. So you have to do that with communications to this generation. And so we can't just use the words we are familiar with, the language we're familiar with. You want to connect with Norwegians or Swedes or Finns or any, like, what's the best way to do that? In their language. So even in the most black and white English versus their language. As well as young people have a language, as well as Instagram has a language and a format, a way to do it. We're not trying to be cool and hip and I'm just saying we're just trying to at least speak something that they understand and do it in a way that makes it easy. The other major part of this that I'll touch on, and so we try to do this by whether making forms really easy to fill out on websites and clicks. There's lots of different pieces to this that I'm going into this week. Another huge one has to do with just that, and this is one that in Newcastle I learned well before being involved in communications, but it has to do with one of the biggest things that we do that hinders our message being heard is our schedule. And what I mean by that in communications is we're so used to working within the confines of our normal schedule that were often, once again, making it really difficult for people to join us. In Newcastle, when I first joined, we were pioneering this ministry called U Street. Our message was taking the gospel to these young people. But our schedule dictated that we worked from Monday to Friday. And so we did pretty good, because we'd go into high schools and we'd communicate the message in the high schools. And maybe it's some after-school stuff. But we worked 9 to 5, so at 5 o'clock we would go home, and we didn't have Netflix to watch back then, but we did stuff, hung out, actually talked to each other. We didn't even have iPhones.
Whoa.
And so what the leaders did in Newcastle was go, if we're serious about reaching young people with the message of the gospel, when's the best time to do that? Not just the best way, because I felt like we were using really good methods, but just the most simple, basic thing was the time. When young people are actually available to listen. And that was Saturday. So our Newcastle's entire location changed its schedule and still to this day operates like this. Tuesday through Saturday. And our weekend is Sunday, Monday. So that on Saturday we could put a huge emphasis on reaching young people. That was a huge part of the fruit of U Street over the years. Was because we wanted our message to be heard, and our audience was available on Saturday. In communications with recruiting students, this also came up. In Newcastle, we were seeing a lot of Europeans wanting to join us in Newcastle. This is awesome. We want more Europeans in Australia and in missions. So we were super excited. A lot of Norwegians too. We've had a lot of Swedes. We've had a lot of people from Finland, Netherlands, Germany, France, the UK. We've had a lot of Europeans. But we were seeing a lot of Europeans, more than ever, in our growth. So we're seeing really cool growth, big DTSs. We're seeing a lot of Europeans contacting us, inquiring. We're still only seeing like 1 or 2 Europeans on every DTS. And we're going, okay, lots of Europeans are applying, inquiring, but not many are showing up. Why is that? Europeans they're pretty onto it. Like, they'll come. Like, there's obviously something wrong here. And we had this aha moment, like, I've kind of already been saying this, phone calls are really important, right? We work 9 to 5 in Australia. 9 to 5, what are Europeans doing? They're sleeping. So it's a simple thing called a time zone. That meant Europeans were not responding. And so our communications team made a commitment that they still do today. And it will sound crazy to you at first. But once a week, sometimes twice a week, they might rotate the team. It's not the same person. They'll have 3 or 4 people that will go in anywhere, depending on the time zones and daylight savings, they'll go anywhere between 4:30 and 5:30 a.m. and make phone calls. So that they can get Europeans when they're finished work or school at the end of their day. What happened? We started seeing more and more Europeans come on DTS. And that was awesome. We call them Euro calls. They've even they've done some Brazilian calls, and even for Australians, 9 to 5 isn't a great time to call Australians because they're either at work, at school, and things like that. So they'll do evening calls to call Aussies every once in a while. So we talked a lot about this at the forum in Mazatlan, and why Mazatlan started to implement a 2 to 10 o'clock p.m. I think once a week call day. So they don't work in the morning at all. The team will get that time off from 2 till 10 p.m. We're willing to shake things up in our schedules and the way that we do things to make it easier for people to join us instead of making it difficult. For the sake of our messaging. In communications especially, now social media, obviously you can time stuff, and you can be sleeping and you communicate to people in Europe, but to get on the phones with them and to really build a relationship with them, it's just as simple as a time zone issue. It's not actually that complicated. But I understand that's easier said than done to change schedules, but it's worth fighting for. Figuring out how in your context you can do that. Is there one day a week, or could you do it every day? Can you rotate people? We need to explore these things if we're serious about mobilizing the nations. If you're serious about mobilizing Norwegians, I think you're going to have to make something a little bit more dramatic. Because as far as I know, it would be similar here. If you're making phone calls from 8:30 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, what are most Norwegian young people doing in that time? you're going to have a lot of failed phone calls to Norwegians. They can't answer the phone. So you're going to have to do some 8 o'clock at night phone call blitzes. And maybe when you've got sunlight till it's midnight, you could actually do some midnight things. And it would feel more normal for you. So you could use those to your advantage. Anyways. Quick coffee sip break. And next. Well done. This is just an example of something we call it's called a landing page. It's one of those just like making something really simple and easy, just giving a little blurb on DTS and a little contact form for people to get contact us. So not overcomplicated. We talk more about this with the team and what they're working with. You can go to the next slide.
Is that Grimmer?
I don't know why I use that photo.
That really got perfect for this location.
It is, sorry. Is that you? Is that what you guys do?
That was last week.
The snails.
On the tractor, and then that's Phil over there. Fixing a suspended.
It's a big tractor. I'm really actually pretty tall.
Phil, thank you for
Okay. This is going to be difficult for me because I'm already spending more time on some of these than I should have. But we can probably finish up some of these with other people in the team. This one, I think this is important for you as a whole group, actually know who's responsible for growth. This is a tricky one. If I were to ask you right now, who's responsible for the growth of Wyoming Greenwood, and specifically your DTS? Who in this room is responsible?
Jesus.
It's a very Christian answer.
His first point was just him.
I know. I can't say you're wrong. I wouldn't say you're wrong. There's actually a lot of right answers, but there's one more right answer. So most of your answers will be technically right. So we got Jesus. Any other votes? There's all of us. Okay, that's another right answer, but it's not more right. I wouldn't say you're wrong.
The people on the phone.
Phil, the people on the phone.
You.
Me, I'm responsible.
We all sign up for that.
That's actually what I love about what I do is I can just like go to base on my house. I don't know. It's not my fault. No, but I think that this is an important one that we had to learn in Newcastle and wrestle through a bit was this idea that everyone's responsible for growth, but nobody is.
Yeah.
That's why you kind of end up with just like, that's why we don't actually end up with growth. It's like, yes, it's the leadership's responsibility. Yes, it's Jesus' responsibility. Yes, it's all of your responsibility. Well, if it's yours, if you're saying it's all of us, what are you doing about it? Did you actually do anything with that responsibility? Probably not, most of us. That's not a criticism. I'm just saying, like, that's one of the issues. It's like, we kind of leave the responsibility of growth to everyone, but it really is nobody. And in Newcastle, when we first started this journey of communications, our communications team wasn't actually responsible for growth. We had a responsibility, and it was to get more people inquiring to do the DTS. The rest of the process within growth was training, was the school leaders, and was DTS people. So we would communicate and get people to inquire. Once someone inquired, we had nothing to do with it anymore. So it was kind of like, we're responsible for this part, you're responsible for that part, which it's all good, but it was once again, everyone's responsible, but there's a bigger DTS, but we're not really sure who is. So at the end of the day, if there's a big DTS or not, we're not, we're trying to point fingers, but is it their fault, or is it their fault, or is it like, who really is, like, who's carrying this? We're not sure.
The chef.
Who?
The kitchen.
The kitchen is responsible for growth. It's true.
In some areas.
Some ways.
Some ways.
Waistline.
If you have a bad kitchen, your DTS students will tell their friends to go elsewhere. Your word of mouth will suffer. But we kind of went on this journey in Newcastle, and I have to be careful to get through this quicker than I would like, is that we started seeing amazing growth in getting more people to inquire. So our responsibility was growing, but the DTS was not still. So it was still this frustration of like, we're not, like, so Phil could do an amazing job, but you guys still not grow. And I remember we were in these leaders meetings with our director, Dave, and we were talking about this, and He wasn't telling us we need to do it. He was just like, what about this crazy idea? And we'd be like, no, we don't want to do that. And he had this idea, like, to me and Robbie, he's like, why don't you guys, like, do the whole process? Like, take on all of it. So, like, the whole application process, visas, everything, until the day someone arrives, that we would be responsible for everything. Or like, no, we don't want anything to do with visas. We like doing our little thing over here, making inquiries. A couple weeks go by, or months, I don't know what the timeline was, but he came back with the idea, and we're like, okay, well, how about this? How about we meet in the middle? We'll take over the phone call part up to when someone applies. So when someone applies to the DTS, it'll go to training, and they'll take care of it. So we're like, okay, sweet. So we take on a bit more, we're learning about those processes and what to communicate. We took on that, like, a part of the phone calls to the inquiries. And we saw more growth. Like, it worked really well. We saw more people applying than ever before. Like, we were basically stewarding that process really well. We were focused on it. But we still weren't growing as much as we thought. So Dave came back with the idea again. Why don't you guys take on the whole process? We're like, no. Number one reason? Visas. Immigration. Bless the people that take care of that stuff. Or involved in that. We didn't really, or that wasn't the only reason, but it's just paperwork and lots of other stuff. We're like, there's the part, we already have our hands full over here. But we finally ended up saying, okay, well, let's do that. Our training director over there is like, yes, go for it. Because it's not that training was doing a bad job at it. Once again, this wasn't us pointing at the finger being like, training, it's your fault for not growing. DTS leaders. They were really busy doing what they do really, really well. Running really great schools and preparing training and raising up their leaders, and they're good at the training part. They're not, you can't be good at communications unless that's all you do. Once again, it's time and focus. So I'm not a better communicator than a DTS leader because I'm a better communicator. I'm better because it's all I do. I live it, I breathe it. And they're better at running the DTS than I am, that's all they do. Like, they have a focus and an emphasis on it. They're gifted at it, they're strong at it, they're learning how to be a better DTS leader. I'm learning how to be a better communicator. So we took that on, and that was one of the biggest keys that launched us into growth. Was for the first time in YMB Castle's history, who was responsible for growth? Now that's the number one reason why Robbie and I didn't want to do it. Because if we didn't grow, whose fault was it now? Daniel and Robbie's. It was 100% our responsibility for growth. Was it still everybody's responsibility? And was it Jesus's? And was it Louise? Yeah. I'm not saying it wasn't, but we took on the entire process. Now that looks structurally different at different wineries that I work with, but it's understanding there needs to be a stewardship of we talked a lot about this yesterday, the whole process from someone who never heard about wine to the day they arrive, that's one communication process. It can't be 17 different people in communications processes. Otherwise you find little leaks or holes that actually totally make it all fall apart. So we make it one process. We made some mistakes in that process, to make the long story short, for sure, but we got it to the point now where we're talking about it more this week, is like where our DTS leaders and our staff and training, they're very involved. So we steward, we lead, and we have the authority over the whole process, but school leaders and DTS staff, they make up a huge part of the actual doing of it. So they make actually most of the phone calls, but they're led by our communications leaders in that context. It's a little bit messy, but we do it because we found it works really, really well. So we do it together. It doesn't mean DTS leaders and DTS staff no longer have any part of this. They just show up and there's a bunch of students in front of them. That's not good either. But it's for some DTS staff leaders, they're like, oh, that's sweet. There's a bunch of students there. But they're actually very engaged in the whole process. So we've come to a good place for that. But who's responsible for growth? It's still communications. I'm not saying that that's the exact way it needs to be done, or what exact structure or whatever, but there is something to it that is really clear, that you know who's responsible for the process. Because the whole process is the communication, not just the tweet, not just the phone call. Communication is the whole thing until you get the response. So if that's 50 processes that are all shattered, it will be broken. That's what I see in most cases. It's broken because they have someone doing media, and then they have something called a registrar, where a single person sitting in a computer writing emails to people. And then you have someone who does visas over here, and they might even be on different sides of the campus. But then they don't even talk to each other, and you wonder why they don't get students. It's broken. It's not Next. These are the actual phones in our office? No. We actually use them. Make lots of phone calls. I often get asked, like, oh, how many times should we try to call someone before we stop calling them? I never put a number to it. I'm just like, just make a whole bunch of phone calls. You can never make too many phone calls. You know, less than conditions. Like, just go for it. One of my favorite speakers that we have come through our communications school for many years, he used to be the dean of the College of Communications, a guy by the name of Kenny Jackson. Yes, he plays the saxophone. It's awesome. Love Kenny. And we've been making phone calls for years before this, so phone call wasn't a new thing. But he gave us this quote that's really stuck with us and is part of this training. A lot of these principles are fundraising 101 too, if you've ever taken fundraising. But he made this comment to us when we were talking about why are phone calls so important, and what do you think about the fact that we're doing these phone calls and stuff, and he left us with this, he said this quote, he said, the more critical the response, the more direct the communication required. So the more critical the response, the more direct the communication required. So if your response is critical, if it's important, which is reaching the lost critical? Is what we're doing critical? Is it important? Is our message critical? Yes. And the more direct the communication required, we need to go as close and direct to the person as possible. So in fundraising, it's the same way. It's like, if the response is critical, we need to go as close as we physically can to the person. Like, we need direct communication. Email is not direct communication. A tweet or Facebook Messenger, those text message is not. There are parts of it, yes, but I'm like, if you want to see a better response, go as direct as you can. The most direct way we have known to man to communicate with people around the world in different time zones is the telephone. It is. Now, the argument against the phone call is young people don't like to receive phone calls, right? Young people also don't like to even make phone calls. So we have to deal with that in discipling our call teams. How many of you in this room would just love to make phone calls? I won't ask the other question. Like, you just can't wait for phones to be set up and to go in and just get rejected by people all the time. No. Not many people like to make phone calls, and not many people like to receive phone calls. So there's two reasons. Young people don't like to make phone calls, and also young people love social media and texting and Snapchat and stuff like that. So we got to be innovative and cool, right? So we got to use those tools to communicate. Yes, but there's a more right answer. Because those are not direct forms of communication. Just because a generation starts using new tools doesn't throw out timeless communications principles. This is a timeless communication principle that's never going to leave. The most effective way to communicate with someone is the most direct form, which is face-to-face. You can't be face-to-face with someone around the world, so what do? A phone call. And we've seen the fruit of this. And what we've learned from feedback, arrival surveys, the actual phone calls themselves, time and time again, is that a young person does not want to receive a phone call until they receive a phone call. Yeah. And when they receive that phone call, it is life-changing. The testimonies that come out of our team making phone calls are some of the coolest testimonies that come out of our ministry. Like, it's amazing, like, the stuff that happens. I'm not just saying about the people that would just choose to do DTS. But the fact that they do that, too, is awesome. Whether it's the, like, incredible, I mean, we have people getting really amazing prophetic words from people over the phone, and, like, one of my favorite stories, I'll just tell really quickly, is, like, we had a girl who she was trying to get a hold of this one girl, she couldn't get through to her, and then one day she was just stopping, before she made the call, she prayed, and it's just like, God, do you have anything for this girl? Like, I'd really like to get a hold of her. God gave her this really clear picture of this, like, tree with, it didn't make sense, she just had this vision of this crazy detailed tree with a cross and all this kind of stuff. She calls the girl, and the girl picks up, and the girl's like, oh no, I'm not interested anymore, I'm halfway through my degree in university, and I don't think missions is for me, kind of thing. And our girl's like encouraging me. She's like, that's awesome. I'm like, no, can I pray? She's like, that's so cool that you want to do college. She wasn't like saying, no, you should do YWAM. She was like really like super stoked on what she was doing. She's like, would you mind if I just pray for you and bless what you're doing kind of thing? She's like, yeah, I'd like that. And she starts praying for it. She gets to the end of the prayer and she's like, would you mind if I got this picture for you before I call. Like, would you mind if I share it with you? And she's like, yeah. She starts sharing this picture. She's like, I don't know what this means, but God gave me this picture for you before I called you. She starts sharing the picture. The girl starts crying on the phone. She literally that weekend had got that tattooed on her. And then she starts opening up about how she'd been wrestling with God for the past 2 weeks over a call to missions. And her mom had been giving her words about going into missions. Who wants to make a phone call now? Yeah! This is the kind of phone calls that can be had. There are also the negative stories, but I don't want to set you up and you go like, wow, I had a bad day. But we have these amazing stories of things happening, and it's like, it's crazy. I've got, if you want to go to the next, I think it's the next slide. I want to just read. I've got pages, literally, of quotes like this. Okay? Pages. I just picked a few of them that highlight. These are out of their arrival surveys. We didn't even ask for phone call quotes. We just asked, like, why did you choose to come to YWAM Newcastle? I got a phone call the day after I applied, and when I saw that communication was an important factor, it made me realize that you care and want me to learn and grow in Christ as much as I do. She came to do it. As soon as I spoke to someone on the phone about my interest, I immediately felt at home and that God was choosing the space for me. I felt individual and important to your base. Sounds like one of our values. Value the individual. Important. These are all messages we hope to communicate to people, right? And this medium of phone calls that we're telling young people, you're important, you're valuable, you're worth it, you can do this. We want you to be in missions. We believe in you. People have told us this in YWAM, that's why we're in YWAM, right? Believe in young people. Not many people are telling me this kind of stuff. The phone calls were crucial. I felt welcomed, listened to, and cared for. Also, the speed of the response was heartening compared to other DTSs I had applied for. Receiving phone calls from people here made me feel like they cared about me and getting me here. Their prayers and encouragement over the phone was a deal breaker. Shouldn't really be a deal maker, but I think you get what she meant. It didn't break the deal. It made a deal. I got told that last time I was reading, and I was like, yeah, you're right. It wasn't a deal breaker. It was a deal maker. But that was her word, so I didn't change it. Like I said, this is 4 out of, I've got pages of quotes. Mazalon has a bunch as well. This is feedback saying phone calls are important, and they work. These are young people who don't like receiving phone calls. But we push through and we get a hold of them, we talk to them, and this is their response. I don't know if there's a next slide on this, or it's just the next point.
It's the next point.
We'll go to the next point. There's a few more little pieces. Phone calls come in a few points. Next slide. Be committed. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. And I was saying this the other day. It's like, I think it's really easy in communications because you don't necessarily see instant fruit to give up. And once again, I don't usually use this picture, but I will for you. I love the idea of farming. Because I think in communications often we're sowing and planting seeds, we're doing all this stuff, and then because next week we don't see a huge DTS, therefore we think that they failed. And it's like, that's like literally sowing, planting all the seed in this field, and a month later, digging it all up because your harvest wasn't ready. It sounds stupid to a farmer. But it's the same in communications. It's like, it's one of those things that, but as young people, we want instant results. We want something right away. This takes a lot of work. It takes time. You've got to plant seeds. You've got to be calling people. They don't just necessarily respond right away. To something on Facebook, to the phone call, to applying, it's a process that takes time. So I'm saying that not to say set you up for any form of disappointment. Maybe your next DTS that you run after this one that's about to start is the biggest in your history. I don't know, but it might not be because this takes time. You have to work hard at it. Don't pull the plug and be like, oh, they don't need people, or it's just not working. That thing Daniel came and said didn't work. I think that's where we often fail the most, is that we're actually doing stuff that's working. We just pull the plug, we stop doing it before we give it time to work, before the fruit can actually be harvested. And so through feedback, through looking at these, this all helps us know. Like with the farm, at least you know, okay, it's sprouting up, it looks healthy. You can tell before. And so there are ways to know it's healthy. But if you're just so focused on the fruit, that's all, you're not going to see fruit right away. It takes time. But you do. There are things to watch to know if it's been working healthy. That's the feedback. So I know if we had given up and not stuck with this and persevered, we wouldn't see growth. Because the first year we did not see growth. But we kept at it. We prayed, we heard God. God encouraged us, no, stay the course. Keep doing this, keep pressing in. At that time we were trusting God, fasting, praying, these words God encouraged us with. If we had stopped, we wouldn't have seen that biggest DJS ever a few months ago. Next one. Fail forward. Probably that term before, and I almost want to change this to just really, 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 really love failing. Failing is so awesome. But also, it's not fun, but at the same time it is. Because of the lesson, this has been such a key to growth across all our locations, is that we've kind of learned to love to fail. Because when we fail, there's this gold there to learn. All the other keys and the lessons we've learned have mostly come out of failure. Like we had that failure I showed you before where the apps plummeted down. That was a failure, but what did we learn out of that? The importance, once again, of the prayer on the phone calls. So it's solidified lessons. It's made these messages like, no, we have to do this kind of thing. So even as leadership or within communications, when you see, say, a monthly report and numbers have plummeted, it's right to have a sense of concern, but also you should then turn that concern into this idea that, like, this is an exciting opportunity. Because you know there's something wrong. You should only be concerned if you have no idea. Like, ignorance or apathy to stuff is more concerning to me. But if you know things are plummeting, numbers in different areas are going down, that's really, really good. The fact that you know is already an amazing thing. And then I want to encourage you, it may take a week, it may take a few months to figure out what's going on, but that's actually, like, it may not be the easiest of journeys to go on, but trust me, you're going to look back and go, that was so worth it. I'm so glad we stuck at it and we learned that lesson because of that. And that failure was the best thing that ever happened to us. The main example I have with this, which, once again, I'm not really sure of the exact order of the slides. Here's another one of these graphs. So this highlights phone calls again. So it kind of confirmed the phone call thing again. But it also taught us a huge lesson and triggered us doing some things that have become the backbone of what we do across all locations. So this time I flipped it for some reason. The blue dots are the applications, and the red bars are how many calls that the team made in a given month. So I'm going to highlight primarily August. Because August, we made a lot of phone calls, and the applications were quite high, so it was doing quite well. But you see that plummet there of 4 straight months of decline in applications and phone calls. Anyways, take away the red bars for a second and just look at just the application plummet. There was something we did in August that caused that, but we had no idea. So in August, we were in a meeting, we were talking about how can we get better at getting a hold. A lot of phone calls you make, you don't get a hold of people. It's normal. We were rightfully so trying to, like, how do we get a hold of people better? Like, we obviously know the time zone thing. Is there any way we can connect with people better? We're thinking, how can we, some of our locations I work with do this in Newcastle. I think there's a way to do it. I'm not getting into how right now. Anyways, we implemented and started to use a SMSing, like a texting platform online to try and text people to see when would be a good time to call. And so we started implementing this to try and, because then hopefully they would text us back and say, call me at this time, and we would get a hold of them in one attempt, right, one try. So like, this could be good. So we did that. So we implemented the system, and September, our applications dropped. And then in October, our applications dropped again. And we're sitting there scratching our heads going, what's going on? The texting, I'm getting good feedback, the texting seems to be working, we're making lots of phone calls. It seems to be going well, but I have this like thought in the back of my head, I think it has something to do with the texting. I this is like, whoa, we're seeing a big plummet. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. We're like, whoa, what's going on? But I couldn't prove that it was the texting. I wasn't like, I didn't want to be right necessarily, but I just had this feeling. But the reason I couldn't say that it was texting was because this graph actually didn't exist. The only graph that existed was the application graph. Before this point, we weren't measuring how many phone calls were being made. So when we implemented texting, we didn't actually know if they were making more phone calls or not. So even that graph I showed you before didn't exist at this point. We knew to make phone calls. Making phone calls was important, but we weren't measuring the phone calls. And so I had no idea if the texting had actually made us make more phone calls, which was the idea behind texting. And the team was encouraging, feeling positive. They're like, we're making lots of phone calls. And it seemed like it, they seemed busy, but I had no idea what the actual number was. So finally I dug in and worked on sales, figured out a way to make sure how could we pull out. They were logging when they would make a phone call in Salesforce, but I just hadn't really figured out how to pull the data out. But I figured that out, I sorted it out, got it, and this graph basically popped up. And I said, oh wow, yes, our phone calls have also been plummeting every single month. So I was like, yes, it is the phone calls. I don't know if it's the texting, but I know our phone calls have plummeted. And in that journey, we figured out that when we text about, so let's say we get a bunch of people that inquire, we text them all, only a few of them would text back. Out of those few that would text back, only a few of them would say, yes, call me at this time. The rest would say, oh, I'm all right, don't give me a call. Young people don't like to receive phone calls. Then we would call those few people, and a few of those people would apply to do an ETS. And only a few of those would actually come to do an ETS. And we were reminded of, and this solidified once again, so there's two things we learned from this massive failure. One, measure something you say is important, phone calls. And two, we needed, we didn't learn, but it re-emphasized that you need to make phone calls. And make lots of phone calls. And that texting was giving, in a sense, another, on our website, our contact forms, we make the phone number. If they want to learn more about ETS, the phone number is a required field. So they give us the phone number to learn more about an ETS, and then we call them. If you didn't give that field, or make it optional, young people don't like receiving phone calls, they're like, oh no, I don't need the phone number, I'll just email. So through this, we're basically giving young people an option to opt out and say, I don't want to receive a phone call, because before they receive a phone call, they don't like it. So for those that like data, this is an example of this, is if we were to get 100 leads that came in a given period of time, we might, these are real stats in a sense, conversion. 40 people would reply to a text. Out of those 40 people that replied, 16 would say, give me a call. Out of those 16, 4 of those people would apply to an ETS. And out of those 4 people that apply to an ETS, 2 of them would actually arrive and do an ETS. Real statistics. So, scrap the texting again. Out of those 100 people, we would just call everyone. Every phone number we get, we call. So that meant 60 people would get a successful phone call. Out of those 60, 14 people would apply. Out of those 14 people that apply, 7 would arrive. Now we get 300 leads a month, so multiply that by 3, you're talking about 21 students versus 6 students a month generated. Multiply that by 3 months, and you're talking the difference between 18 students and 63 students over a 3-month period difference. It hurts. All because of texting. That's a failure and a half. But the lesson learned changed and something that, not just for Newcastle, but every location now measures phone calls really well and makes sure that that's a primary thing and has benchmarks and goals for that. There's a tweet, we used to get these tweets all the time from people that get phone calls. This girl came and did an ETS, she's staffing ETSs now, she led the call team for like 2 years, she's amazing because we just called her. And so this is why we do this, why we call. So it's not that texting's bad, there's ways you can implement it, I think, in your communications process, and we we like, but when you give it to a young person, they obviously don't want, we know young people don't want to receive a phone call. But once you give them a phone call, they love it.
At the YWAM Mazatlan in their call, where they make their calls, they have written on the wall, we're literally calling people into missions.
Literally, yes. Yeah. So this is the impact that these phone calls make, and it really does make a mission. So we are out of time. I do have 2 more points, but I think those are very much broader points, and they're ones I can cover in the team. So I'm not too worried that I can manage my time that great, because I think you got the main keys that I'm after. The next 2 are much more big picture ones. Which this has to do with. This is the first ever DTS at Wild North Cascades in Linden, Washington. So it's the pioneering team. And so it's like the first sprint that I did. They had vision and word of the Lord to get 30 students on their first DTS, and that's where we were able to give them the benchmarks, an idea of what it would look like for them to see that happen. I did a sprint 6 months from their DTS, and they got 34 students on their first DTS. Anyways, I think maybe in the next session after we take a break, for those, because there's still, I know a bunch of you that are still going to be here, I'll cover the last 2 points, and then we'll get into the student training policy. But we can take a break now for those of you that need to go.
So we'll break up now. What we're going to do is, we don't call the next session a mandatory session, but we do want to, for those who want to stay, we call it an open session. So if you want to stay and learn more, this is
Real.
Yeah,
Totally.
it would be really nice if you came to the seats of blessing. It's a good Pentecostal, I just say anointing flows from the pulpit. We're not that many. We've learned that Daniel doesn't bite, so let's gather so that we're not scattered. This session is called the Student Journey. This is called the Student Journey, where we will look at how we can really do this together. Because, like I said in the start of last session, our end goal is seeing more workers on the field, which is the end goal of a DTS. And that's where we see that doing calls, doing recruiting is a key part of that. And the cross-section of that is between the DTS and the communication. And that's where we'll head into for this session.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly finish up the last one.
Yeah.
So it's fine.
Yeah, but you said you were.
Yes, I've got it. Let's go to truth. I think you will find this photo is real. Okay, so here's another photo. This is a closer-up picture of those exact same kind of harvester combine things. And there's a bunch of them. If you just search harvester, these are the main one you find.
Yeah, no way.
So they might not do it that way in Norway, but in you go to the U.S. or these big you think you got big farms here. There's farms in the U.S. that are bigger than Norway. Whoa, boom. I just made up that statistic. But there are big farms.
Iowa is, the whole state of Iowa is just one big farm.
Yeah. So, this is legit, they have farm, and it's flat, just as far as the eye can see. It's massive farms. So, even if this photo's photoshopped, there's other ones just like it, trust me. Just real hard to I was not lying.
If you want to understand the term the harvest is plentiful, you should look.
Go to America. So like I said, I think this is Brazil somewhere. From my faint memory of when I was looking for it.
It's an interesting analogy, though. If you look at, we have one harvester that harvests the fields, and we have fields that you can do that. We only have so many acres, but if you want to multiply your harvest times 10, or you need 10 more harvesters.
You're taking my point.
Wow. Whoa. You should teach.
So I'm just going to quickly touch on these last 2 points, and these are ones that have already, I'm sure, that definitely come out, so I won't harp on these stories themselves, but I do want to kind of just finish up on these. This one talking about one of our keys to growth, or main things that we get more students and let's grow, but it's like, really comes back to, which is something that's foundational to us. YWAM obviously is hearing God's voice. And vision comes from God. And so, with all of this communications work, we do start with what is God saying. And we really work hard and do what we can to seek God on what is the growth that He's after, and to get, in a sense, even get real numbers on it. It's not that we always hear God right, or we're perfect with all this, but we have a general sense of like, what kind of growth is God actually taking us to? We start there, and then we look at how do we steward that.
Yeah.
If God calls you to build a building, you then go through a process of what will it look like to build that building, right? You find the right kinds of construction workers and builders, and you get architect plans drawn up, and you get all the kinds of equipment you need to build that size of a building. But I think with growth, especially the growth of the BTS, it's kind of like God calls us to a certain size of growth, and then we're trying to build a building with like a little toy hammer. This is why I show this picture, because it's like back to the harvesting mentality. It's like if God's called you to a massive harvest, you could not like if that field was as far as the eye could see. As far, like, once again, I don't know farming that well, but like say if you wanted 60 trillion tons of grain or something, which maybe that's a lot, or maybe it's actually not that much for a farm like that. If that's what God was calling to you as far as the size of a harvest, it would be just straight up dumb to go out and purchase 1 acre of land and expect that result. That's not good stewardship. That's just not. That's nothing. You also, even if you had the land, if you had that size of a harvest ready to be harvested, you wouldn't go out there with a pair of garden scissors and try to harvest it. You could never get the harvest. You'd never see the fruit. It would take you 1,000 years to harvest a field that size with a pair of scissors. Even if you got 50 people trying to do it with you, you're not going to see the same result. I think in YWAM sometimes, and this has to do, I think it's easy, there's this pendulum. It's like, all faith, if we just pray, the harvest will come. Once again, it's not wrong. And then there could be like, yes, you can strive and do it all by works, but it's faith with works. It's God wants to partner with us. He wants to do it with us. I think we're so like, we can get extremely faith-based. We're like, God's spoken it, therefore it'll come. Like God said 50 students, and we're just going to sit around and do nothing. Pray a little bit, and God will bring the growth, which isn't wrong. Yeah, I just said that. God will bring the growth. And God can just bring 50 students to you. But I think most of the time what I've seen around YWAM is He doesn't. If you just sit around and do nothing. He's like, I'm sure God is like, this is what I meant. I gave you a word. It's the parable of the talents. Or it's like, you've heard these things of like sowing and reaping. Like, this is what Jesus taught. He didn't give you a word for you to go and sit there and hold on to it. Go and invest it. Go work. Go do something with it. And I like this picture, real or not. Because this is they want a certain size harvest. They're pretty serious about harvesting it. I've asked people that like know these specific harvesters. I think cost around like $500,000 each. So when I talk about investment, I mean I don't know what your harvester that does these fields costs. You know?
Same.
About the same?
Yeah.
So that right there is probably like $10 million US dollars, like in equipment there, in investment to see that harvest. Versus I got a pair of 99-cent scissors from Walmart. Sure, everyone knows what Walmart is.
IKEA.
Or IKEA, yeah. IKEA is perfect. Yeah, you can get just these little. You can get anything at IKEA. There's lots of different kitchen utensils you could get. It would be like trying to get like a spatula from IKEA and go out and try to harvest, whack them or something. Like, this only cost me 99 cents. I'll get the same harvest. So So stewarding your vision takes investment. And these are also these farmers, these people driving it. They're like highly skilled. They know what they're doing. It's all they're doing. Still takes a lot of time, but they're investing in it. I talk about this with coffee all the time too. It's like if you want a better, I'm not going to tell the whole analogy, but I do this a lot. With coffee, if you want a better result, there's a lot of process and a lot of investment and time and energy and money that goes into getting a good cup of coffee. Now you might like this fine, and you might like this better than fancy good coffee, and that's fine. This isn't a matter of opinion. This is a matter of what is actually this black and white good coffee. You don't necessarily argue that, is that the investment of time and energy, there was still some that went into this, but it's much less and it's much cheaper. You get a worse result. And I know this from Newcastle, like the time and the energy and the art that goes into it, and then the money, the price that the grinder costs is crazy. They have they weigh each shot with this special digital scale that's made just for coffee. It hooks to your phone and everything. Then the machine itself, I think I showed you a picture before, but the machine that Newcastle uses in our cafe, you go to the fanciest cafe in Oslo, they probably use the same machine. So if you know machines, it's a Lamarzico. It's really nice. And it's a big Lamarzico too, it's not like a little one. They run about 25 to 30 grand. It's why when you go into cafes, some cafes, especially in Australia, you go to some cafes and they got like milk crates for seats and little like pallet tables and stuff. You think they're all trying to be really hipster. They're not. They can't afford the tables. The money's in the machine. There's real investment to get a good result out the other end. In America, they love pod coffees, the little Keurigs, and put a little makes the coffee instantly, but it's awful junk. So if you want something quick and easy and a worse result, so anyways, I already went further than one on that, but a lot of what we're doing, it has to do with both within this investment, it has to do with stewarding the vision, the word of the Lord. And that's what the North Cascades story was, as far as like, I was with them and said, what is God saying to you about your first DTS? And it was while I was with them, they prayed and heard God together as a team, that they were going to believe God for 30 students. So I said, okay, what size field do you need? How much seed do you need to sow? What kind of tools do you need? That they don't just go, we got 30 students, but they sit there and twiddle their thumbs and go, God's going to bring it. They took that seriously. They said, if this is the word of the Lord, we're going to take that seriously. We're going to do whatever we can. We're going to pray, we're going to fast, we're going to, yes, trust God for the growth, and we're going to believe that God wants us to do something about it too, and we're going to buy the computers and get the phones set up and get the system like Salesforce or HubSpot set up, and we're going to get the online forms for the applications going, and they worked, and they made phone calls, and they invested, and they got, what did they get as a harvest? 34 students. Stewarding the growth. I think that's why we fall so short of most of our goals for DTS students. And it's not that we don't want to or we're not hard workers, it's often we actually just don't know how to drive the tractor, or we don't know the tools, we don't know what we need to buy. That's what, so you do your training, I get that, it's not like we're being lazy, I'm not saying that. But we do need to actually steward the vision. The final point has to do with, and this is a broader mission one, next point. I was saying, I've got to try to start using my watch to change the slides, because I technically can. It's an Apple Watch, but I wanted to come out with an app where you can like twist your wrist and it'll change. But then it's saying like it'll look like I'm like twitching every time. Okay, next point. It's not working. And Christopher's brought up this next point a few times as well from what I've been saying. It's like, well, I haven't necessarily said it myself purely. This last point has to do with really wanting to see more people mobilized into missions. And I think this is important in our mission as a whole. Wyoming's very unique. We're decentralized. We're all around the world. We have DTS all around the world. But as a whole, DTS numbers are not going up. They're staying, for literally the last 10 years, have stayed stagnant. They've gone up and down a little bit. They're around 10. Well, when you think about registered, I always have to clarify, registered are the U of M DTS students. There's some bases that don't register students in the U of N system. But there's around 10,000 that are trained in DTS every year. That hasn't really changed much. It's not much of a wave. It's kind of like we're not, but you look around bases, and some bases are exploding, and some bases are going backwards. It's kind of like this like redistribution of students. The same amount of people are being mobilized into missions every single year. How do we as a mission grow well together? How does our communications impact how we grow well together as a mission? Are we thinking about that as a local entity, how our communication impacts the rest of the mission's growth? Is it positively, is it negatively? We're often not asking those questions, sometimes even the really hard questions. Is something we're doing, even unintentionally, most of the time unintentionally, recruiting students away from other bases, which once again is not another student in missions, it's just another person in missions, it's just the same person who's already going to join. One of the most exciting things about the growth of many of our locations that I'm working with is the growing percentage of students that are on these DTSs that have never heard about YWAM before we got in contact with them. So these are new people mobilizing to missions that were not, a friend told me about it, and then I went online and Googled you, and you had an ad that told me I should come to you, so I came to you. And so we're working hard to create ways of doing it that, yes, we still want, if people know about YWAM, want them to hear about us and stuff like that. I'm not saying it's one or the other, but I'm saying we're working on how do we avoid any really blatant ways where we're really, in a sense, getting in front of preferring ourselves over other bases, but even more than that, it's not about that, it's about, I know there's millions of young people out there in the world that want to do YWAM, they don't know it's called YWAM. My favorite picture for that is, it's a fishing one, is if you just picture a little tiny pond, and there's little fish in it. This isn't a tiny pond, but it's still a lake, so you can say there's a bunch of fish in there. Still big, but there's a bunch of fish in there. And it's like, as YWAM bases, our communications, we're going to that pond, we've got our poles in the pond, and we're all fishing for these fish that know about YWAM, and they're trying to bite, they want to do YWAM. Some of us have pretty nice fishing poles, and we're doing a pretty good job catching fish. Some of us are sitting on the shore, just trusting Jesus that the fish will jump into our nets. Sometimes one maybe does. And then some of us have boats in the lake, catching more fish. And then you got this really big boat. It's called YWAM Kona. And you've got Lauren driving it around. Once again, not delivering, but I'm saying, in YWAM, is that we're all fishing in this pond for people, the 10,000 DTS students every year. So same amount of fish are being caught out of the same lake every year by YWAM. And some of us are just better than others at it because we're investing in communications. Well, you guys, we're really good at communicating, so that our fishing pole is our communications, catching the fish. But what we've started to do is, yes, we're still at the pond. We still want people to come. But what we've started to realize is that there's in your guys' case, I can use the Atlantic Ocean. There's an Atlantic Ocean out there of millions and millions of fish. And fish you don't get fish like a tuna in this lake. And tuna is that's my favorite. Ultimate. I don't mean tuna in a can, in Hawaii they call it ahi. Ahi tuna steak, just lightly seared, basically raw. Oh my goodness. Anyways, but they're big fish too. Marlin, all these massive, that's in the ocean. And the amounts of them out in the ocean. Or king crab in Alaska, or anything. Lobster. You're not going to get lobster like you do in Maine. I should show you a photo of the lobster I've been eating recently. Oh my goodness. That's not the point, but I believe there's an ocean out there. And that's where the big next waves of missions are going to come with these millions of young people that want to do YWAM. They don't know it's there. And it's much harder to do. I'm sure the first people that ever did deep sea fishing out in the ocean, and caught the first tuna and marlin and stuff like that. That's not those are bigger, more expensive boats, and it's riskier, and people die doing fishing in Alaska. So it's much riskier, and there's not always as much reward, but there's just more out there. So we're, as YWAM Newcastle and Low Basis, we're doing what we can to take that risk, to go out to the ocean, go out to where YWAM necessarily, maybe it's being in ways, but going out to see how we can mobilize, basically catch more fish, see more people in missions. The fishing in the pond will always happen, and that's great. It's not that the pond is a bad place, run away, it's poisonous. It's a good place. We're still there. We have some people there that are fishing, we're catching some fish. People are coming from WAM.org and seeing our Facebook or Googling us or whatever it is. That's sweet. Or a friend is telling them. But we're getting more and more people out there in the ocean that are coming. And what I want to see is in the next few years, I want to see those U of N numbers and see it go from 10,000 to 15,000 to 20,000 to 30,000. I see all of us growing together. And linking and collaborating. And this is what our leadership forum we had in Buffalo was a few months ago. It's like, how do we get together? And like, it's hard, it's awkward. We all, I think in ourselves, even without saying it, we're really focused, and it's out of stewarding our vision God's given us, but we're building our kingdoms versus being more focused on how do we build the kingdom of God.
That's good.
How do we make our base big? How do we grow our DTS? Those aren't wrong things, like, because God's called you to grow your base. But we're totally ignoring how do we grow the movement, how do we grow it all. And that's what I said, even without knowing, or it's not intentional necessarily. Sadly, there are communication strategies in YWAM that are intentionally placing their location in front of other locations. And 99.9% of the time, that's not because the leadership of that base wants to do that, they just don't actually even know about it. But they're still responsible. That's why I say to base leaders often, it's like, do you know, like, are you aware? Are you taking communication seriously in a sense? Or are you just, students are coming so you're happy? Do you know why they're coming? Because I can look at some bases and go, I know why they get big DTSs, and I'm not happy about that. But I'm sure the base leader is because things are great. But I know some of the strategies that are going on, that they might even hire another business to do, that are not blessing the family of YWAM and are not actually seeing us mobilize more people in missions. But they're mobilizing more people to their base. But I'm not showing we're getting into all the details of that. Anyways, growing together, that's what it's been exciting about. It's a network of a group of locations building friendships with each other. How do we do this well as a family? Do it as much as we can in a YWAM way. I'm not trying to create some centralized organization of communicators that do our thing. We're working together to see this happen. So that's growing together. So that's it. Any questions? No, I mean, I can't do that now. We're in this because this next part that we'll go into is not a seminar, me sitting here and just talking the whole time. I'm going to share some stuff, but I want for you as we get into this second part of the student journey and the student communications part, I want it to be more discussion and looking at things, and I can show you stuff that I have. It's supposed to be like the rest of the sprint a bit more, so just to prep you for that. But even out of these last few points, are there any questions or comments or thoughts that you have before I go? Now that we're in this time, it's a little more informal, we can, I don't necessarily have to press on. I just need to look at my computer really quick, so I can talk about it too. So
You can take it if, I think you've done the slideshow.
well, I want to put up another one. I haven't done a slideshow. No, I'm just doing this.
You've got a lot of slideshows.
I feel like a phone call.
Do you want to play that video from the last?
It's in here, that's why I said that.
Wonder if we have sound.
Let me just try that.
Before coming to YWAM, I was with. Before coming.
Okay, I'll play this together. So, because I mean, earlier I did start talking already a bit about the phone call, but I want to get into like we'll talk more about how we make phone calls. If you have questions on how all this is structured, that's what this is. I'm not going to go through a. Sometimes I'll do that, but in this case, I don't. I'm basically telling you, don't expect me to stand here and lecture you, but I might times, but I'll do my best. But we did this yesterday. We have basically two main session times or discussion times during the sprint that's called the student journey. What I was encouraging those that were there yesterday, sort of as an intro, that I'll kind of just repeat for those who weren't there, is that, like I said earlier too, with communications, it's important that we steward the entire process, the whole process from when someone has never heard about YWAM all the way through to the day that they arrive. That's communication, that whole entire process. And so that journey that a student makes in order to arrive, it's important to how we as communicators that we look at how are we doing that well? How are we being creative, innovative? How are we creating content? And our Instagram posts and our ads, advertising, or our blogs? Are we considering that process and how we communicate? And we talked yesterday from the first phase of the student journey, like getting people interested in wanting to apply, that kind of thing. Whether it's writing blogs or ads and stuff like that, it's understanding, hey, these people have never heard about Wyoming before. Are we using language like DTS? And like, how are we framing our messages? Where are we taking those messages? What mediums are we using? Like, that kind of thing. How do we connect with this generation? Not just, this is what I write, so I'm just going to share it on Facebook and therefore it's that. But actually really thinking this process through. Even to the point of we're creating content to help, say, students further along in the student journey, like they've applied and they're about to come, we're creating content to help serve them in that process. All of our communication process is there to serve our audience, serve the people we're trying to reach and mobilize, like I said, not ourselves. So we even, in Newcastle, we created how to pack for DTS videos, and how to, in Newcastle, you can catch a train from Sydney, which is where most people fly into, up to Newcastle, and we created a video to help students learn how to catch that train. I came from Hawaii, we don't have trains in Hawaii. I never caught a train in my life. There was no how to catch a train video when I came, so I didn't catch the train. I took this expensive shuttle out. But the train is actually much cheaper, it's really easy, and most people take the train. But now pretty much 90-something% of our students take the train. Because it's super easy, they all do it together, and we have a really great video that shows them how to do it. And so we're doing these things, how do we serve that process? And are we actually, as creatives, creating videos and content for every part of the process, versus just making the same thing over and over again? It's just for a certain part of that process, but ignoring the rest of it. If you only create how to catch a train videos, that doesn't make sense to someone who's never heard about Wi-Fi. That's not going to connect them to missions. So if you only make certain types of things that you're like, oh, this is a good idea I have. Well, yes, it's a good idea, but we've already made 10 videos just like that. It's a new form or a creative way of doing the same thing. So are we actually looking at that process and filling in the holes and the gaps? It's crazy. I was saying this yesterday, it's like our team in Newcastle, I'd never tell them to do this, but you really could. They could shut down not the student communications part, but the creative, like the content, social media. They could shut it down for the next 3 or 4 years and still be communicating like crazy. Because they have so many videos and so many blogs and so much content that they could schedule out for the next 3 or 4 years. And it would just keep cranking. Because they've covered the whole spectrum of the student journey. And a blog you wrote 2 years ago is brand new to your audience when you post it again 2 years later. It's still just as relevant. So a blog like 5 reasons to do a discipleship training school or something. That's a basic one. You post it and you go, okay, well, you wrote that blog and posted it and those people liked it. Well, what about the people in 3 months' time who are new to your organization? They would also like to read it, so post it again. Like, not like you post it every day, but as I'm saying, we've created content that's timeless, that can serve that journey, that they could just schedule out over the month, and they do, they cycle. We work in cycles and stuff like that. How to catch a train video. A week or 2 before every single DTS, that gets shared on Facebook again. We have emails that go out and something like that. We're able to recycle this stuff. They're still creating new content and doing new stuff, but we're always looking at how do we serve that student journey process. But the big part of, which is for DTS staff and leaders that are involved in this stuff, is the phone calls. Like I said, this is a huge part of it. It's where most of the manpower goes into it, like where most of our staff work. so that's what we're going to kind of discuss and talk about in this next part, is like how to make phone calls, how to structure your questions. So like I said, and this is the reason I don't necessarily seminar it, is because in each location and context, you might structure that slightly differently. The way that you navigate this might be different. In every location I've worked with, it navigated this differently. But through that, I've learned as well, like, there's ways they've navigated and done it, and it's worked, but it hasn't worked as effectively as the other locations because they decided to do it a little bit more similar, a little bit more extreme, I guess you could say, where they've taken this whole responsibility part on. But it does take time for any of this stuff to roll out, to work out. I'm not saying you walk away tomorrow and you're all of a sudden structured this way. You guys have to work this through in relationship with each other and how you do that. Because like I said, this was years and years of process for us in Newcastle, how we do that, how we interact with school leaders, with DTS, how we interact with the DTS staff, how we recruit our own staff and leadership over these areas. Like, it's all been a process, and not always the cleanest, but it's been a really good one as a whole. That's seen us call people into missions and everything. I have 2 videos I want to show really quickly. The first one, there was that quick tweet I showed. There's this girl, Lorna, and I just want to show you this testimony because this is her sharing her testimony. And the reason I show it is because she doesn't say that in this testimony, but she came to Newcastle because of that phone call. And she spent the last 2 years doing the same for others. And now she's staffing the DTS as well, herself. So she's been doing student communications for, I think, 2.5 years, calling people into missions. Now she's also staffing the DTS herself, discipling people. But it comes back to that moment of communication that someone got on the phone and called her. And this is her testimony.
Before coming to YWAM, I was really struggling with panic attacks and just felt like my whole life was controlled by fear. A lot of the time I didn't want to go to school or even leave my bed. So I started having them when I was 13, and at first I didn't think it was that big a deal. I just got on with it and it was something I had to deal with. It kind of felt like the walls were closing in around me and like I couldn't breathe. It's just like this super intense feeling that you just can't, you feel like you have no control over anything. And then when I was like 18, it got to the point where I was having them every single day and just couldn't imagine living without them. I thought like I obviously was just created like that. If I do this, am I going to have a panic attack? If I go to school today, am I going to have one? So when God was like, you should go to Australia to go do a discipleship training school, I was like, God, I cannot do that, honestly. I took the step, but I took the step very afraid. So I hopped on the plane really scared, but it was one of those things where I knew that something in my life needed to change. I was still having panic attacks in my lectures and different things like that, and just was always feeling disappointed in myself and felt like I was disappointing God by not walking without fear. It was really discouraging because I thought even by coming here that something would change, and it felt like nothing had. And that was just really hard because then I was wondering like, how can God ever use me if I can't just get over this? I remember this one week on my discipleship training school that God really distinctly spoke to me and just said like, Lorna, like I didn't create you to be fearful, I created you to be brave. And that just really shocked me because I couldn't imagine that to be true. And then I felt like God told me to do something that really scared me. And I realized in that moment that I had a choice where either I could obey God or I could keep living how I was living. I ended up getting up in front of my whole class and just like declaring truth over my situation. I just shouted out like, God, I'm not going to live in fear anymore. And that was when, I felt peace for the first time. I felt like there'd been this like rising pressure inside me. I was like, I can't ignore this. And then the second I shouted out, it was like, there was like a release and I was like, it's going to be okay. From then on, like, it was just like little steps of doing things that normally would scare me and realizing I'm not panicking, seeing that God came through for me. I realized that I could trust Him fully and I could give everything to Him and that He was going to be faithful and He was going to take care of me. It's been 2 years and I haven't had one since that day. It's incredible. Like, I just feel joy like I've never felt before and so much peace and just realizing God can use me in ways I never ever expected. Part of what I've been doing since being back at YWAM is working in student communications. So I've been calling people I've never met over the phone and getting to call them into missions and to experience the life-changing experience that I had, it's been really cool because I got to talk to a lot of people with anxiety and get to share my story, and that's given them so much hope and belief that they can also get healing and also live free from fear. So it's cool that when God's done stuff in my life, I can share that with other people and encourage them, and yeah, that hopefully they'll want to find the same freedom that I found.
That's Laura. She's awesome. And it's been a privilege working with her and even seeing her journey. I mean, I remember even when she first joined staff, it's just a lot of stuff she still wrestles with. She's just a different person today. It's incredible. And so to see her now, you know, taking that lead and staffing this actual training school herself and everything like that, where I would have just been like, Laura should staff at ATS. She should definitely. As you can see, it's awesome. So, there's another like just quick clip that I want to show you. There's a few clips in there, but it actually shows our student communications office. So just give you a quick picture of them like making the phone calls kind of things. Nothing in that video was staged. Like, they were making real phone calls, like they just brought the camera in quickly and did that quick clip. And that, I always get asked that at the end too, like, was that like a fake, like fist bump? No, that was like, she just got the phone and had a really good phone call and the girl was applying to UBTS. That was real. So none of that was actually like staged or she was being fake. That was actually real. So I'm not desperate doing this, so we already talked about this. But you can do that up there, I guess. The way our offices are, you saw, all of our offices in Newcastle are built into and built in shipping containers. And so our student communications office is actually, you saw one side of it actually, that ramp that they're walking up to, it's split, there's two shipping containers. So both sides they're making heaps of phone calls, but on one side they also do a bit more of the administrative stuff as well, processing applications and that kind of stuff. But they can, I think there's about 12 phones in there in total, headsets and handsets and stuff like that can be making 12 calls simultaneously all at the same time. Just outside of that shipping container and a more open out offices are where our creative team is, where they're doing the social media and the video production, photography, and everything like that. So that makes up what is our creative, what we call at Newcastle, our creative and communications department, which is basically made up of, it's one department, but made up of sort of two unique, distinct teams that do work together, obviously, in the process. But you've got what's more creative team side, like I said, they're responsible for ads and for social media and video content, everything like that, which serves the whole process, but their main focus is on the getting people the lead generation side. And then you've got the student communications team, which Lauren has kind of assisted in leading over the years. That is basically taking the second someone gets in contact with Wine Newcastle, fills out a contact form on our websites, or applies to do an ETS. That's the team that's on the phone instantly. We don't have a get back to people within 24 hours policy. We have a get back to the person the second they contact you policy. Obviously, if we're asleep or not doing it, we don't do that. So I'm not saying we get back to people instantly, but if someone inquires, we get back to them right away. And so on average, we have between 8 and 12 people working in there full time. Full time is not a real thing in wildlife. You may know what I mean, but there's still obviously a lot of other things, base meetings, staff meetings, all kinds of stuff that go on, department meetings, good things that are meetings, but they've got different training stuff that they're doing. There's also obviously other events and stuff that we do, pieces that distract, but their primary, it's better to call it kind of their primary role is student communications. It's basically, like I said, grabbing the hand of a young person from the point of them saying, I want to learn more about this YWAM thing, to the day they arrive, they walk them along that journey and use the medium of the phone as the primary method of doing that, along the entire process. Not necessarily just to get them to apply, and then once they apply, we're going to email them and just get them to send forms in, but the relationship comes first, and then the system and the forms and the process is a secondary piece to that. Still an important piece, but we always start with that. I'll talk about this in the sense of like talking, I like to call it like with our DTS, that the DTS starts the second someone inquires. What I mean by that is like we're not waiting for them to arrive to start the relationship and make it and tell them, hey, you can be a part of missions and believe in them and start the discipleship process. And we all know from maybe phone calls or emails or stuff we've had with students that are applying, like you're already sharing testimonies with them and teaching them about faith and finances as they're fundraising and believing God to come on their DTS. And you're walking things out with students. They might be going through family issues and family doesn't want them to do YWAM or whatever it is. Like you're already doing this kind of stuff, which is what you then do when they're here. And so we kind of have that mentality there. It's like the DTS starts right away when they get in contact and we're building relationship and building that with these young people as they go along. Because, and once again, because we value them as an individual, we think it's important that they get involved in missions and that they follow God and all this stuff. It doesn't have to be with YWAM Newcastle, but that's why we're there. We're trying to mobilize people in missions in Newcastle. And so they, like I said, they walk them through that process from phone calls to getting them to fill out and apply. They also are the ones that accept students on the DTS. They get all their forms in. They help them with their visas. They get them to actually physically arrive all the way there. And I've explained a few times throughout the week, even process-wise or structurally, like in that video you just saw, most of those staff, including the girl that did this, she's a DTS staff. That really cool-looking guy that was making the phone call, sitting back with headphones around, he's one of my good friends, Nathan. He leads the July DTS and has for the last couple of years. So he's the DTS leader, and he's in there making phone calls. So the way that we do that, and this is where we can get into some discussion and questions on that, how that looks. We have ourselves in communications have staff and leaders that we've recruited and asked to, hey, would you come in and lead student communications? And they're full-time on our team, they're leaders in our team. That's all they do is communications. But like I said, most of the staff that come in, so we might have 2 to 4 full-time student communications staff that's their, I've committed to do this for a year, 2 years. Like Lauren is one of those people. So she's not DTS staff. She is now, she's on staff DTS, but that's different. And all these other ones making calls are DTS staff. And so, but like I said, it's their primary role. They're not doing anything else. They do other things, but like I'm saying, like this is what they do each day when they come into so those of you, I mean, no one's staffing DTS right now, right?
Well, not right now.
No, that's what I'm saying. No one's staffing DTS right now. So it's like, in your case, it's like this is what they're doing. Now, not every single person is doing that, but say out of a staff team of 6 or 7 people, maybe 4 or 5 of them would be in there full time. And once again, it's not always the school leader too, but it does take solid leadership in there. And so if the school leader has a really solid co-leader or something like that, or a leader they're rising up to help lead, they might have them in there instead. Or the school leader's not always the best fit in there, but so it's not necessarily we don't necessarily prescribe. It's got to be this. It's got to be all your team. All DTS staff and DTS leaders have to be in there and have to do all this, but it's not about have to. And it's not about we need your help, school, and I'm sure you get that, but it's not about we need your help, school leaders and DTS staff in our communications office, because you realize what we're doing, right? We're mobilizing people in your DTS, but it's also ours. We all have ownership together. We all are responsible for the growth in that sense.
We're talking about joining the call team when the DTS isn't physically running. So if you're, I mean, I know you guys do a 9-month DTS as well, but like say with a 6-month DTS, there's 6 months of
so our staff basically, they finish at BTS, and they do holidays and different stuff after. But then a portion of that team will rotate in and serve under communications. And so the student communications leader will be their leader. Their DTS leader is still their leader, which could get confusing at times, but when they come into the office each day, that's who they're reporting to, and that's who they're working with and doing work for. And once again, I said, that's because the student communications leader is an expert. That's what they've committed to do. They're the ones that are stewarding and holding the quality of communications, how phone calls are made, how we do all this. They're carrying how it's done. And then the DTS are carrying the vision of what it actually is that the students are going to. There's no better recruiter than a DTS leader or staff. If you're a DTS leader and staff here, you are the best person for the job of recruiting to your DTS. Why? Because young people want to do it with the person there, the relationship, and also because it's your vision. Yes, it's all of our vision, it's Y1's vision, but your DTS is, you've got a heart and passion to do it, that's why you're doing it, right? And so there is no one better. Now our other staff make calls and recruit people to do DTS, totally, because we've all done the DTS and we all have the vision of DTS and get it. So anyone can recruit really well to DTS, but I'm just saying no one's really better at it than you. And so I love that our DTS staff come in and do that. And ultimately it's stewarding your vision. If God's called you to disciple people, stewarding that means calling people to do that, recruiting people to do that. So it still is, there should be, whether it's a technical, structural responsibility, you should still carry a responsibility to actually put your money where your mouth is and do it. And grow in this area of communications. And we made this mistake in a way when we first took on the whole responsibility. We didn't do it like this, but in a way we said to the DTS staff and leaders, we kind of kicked them to the curb and said, you go just prep your schools and do your thing, we're going to take the whole process down. And they didn't have anything against that either. They were just like, sweet, we have more time to prep our schools and do our thing. There was two problems with that. One, they didn't really carry any sense of ownership over recruiting to their school, so it was kind of like this handout, here's a bunch of students, cool. They didn't have a relationship with the students either until day one. They never even spoke with them. Secondly, and this is a leadership thing, I think we didn't equip our school leaders very well on this. We had a story of some school leaders that went to another location, pioneering in North America somewhere. And when they went there, they were going to lead a DTS for them. And they were there for a couple of years, and they never were able to lead a DTS there. Because each year, they didn't get any students. Because those DTS leaders, they were amazing DTS leaders, but as a leader, they were never equipped on or never experienced what it meant and what it took, the work it took, and what you should do in order to actually recruit and mobilize people to do DTS. So they couldn't actually go and start their own DTS because they didn't know it. They didn't have that system that Newcastle had. They didn't have that handout of students. They just kind of thought they would come. But we hadn't really prepared them as leaders very well. This isn't just a DTS thing. Any ministry, communications is so key. If you're a leader with a vision, you need to grow in your communication. Doesn't mean you'll be the greatest communicator, but you need to grow in it. You need to get really good at it. And so we kind of flipped the pendulum back and said, hey, no, we really, really, really want DTS leaders and DTS staff involved in this process. I think it's right. We need it, both for communication's sake and for the DTS's sake. It's so cool to see that synergy, how it's worked. Still not always clear, but it's like the fact that if a DTS is trusting God for 50 students, we say to them, well, this is about, once again, to steward it, this is about what it would take. So you have a staff team of 10, and you guys as a staff team can pray about it, and as a school leader can pray about, this is about how many people we need to be able to make enough calls to actually see that result. And they send 7 people, and they make the phone calls over the next 6 months. And we help them do that. We kind of show them what they can do. We're there communications is there to serve you in seeing your vision come to pass. And do everything we can. And if there's not enough DTS staff, we are going to be making the calls ourselves too. It's like we're all carrying this together. Because the DTS having students is more important than just
the DTS leader, the DTS staff's desire to have students. It's critical to the base. It's critical to the growth. And so that's basically how it works in Newcastle. And so that's, like I said, that's where most of these people are. We're on the phones, we're processing this. But we're constantly tweaking and making the system better. Our communications team is learning new ways of doing it. Like I said, they're, as a team, and even as a special communications leader, they are empowered, even in our process, to accept students. Like, they're empowered and have the authority to accept anyone on a DTS. A DTS leader does not have to approve an application. That might be radical to some, but it's not in our case. And once again, I'll tell you something. I would trust and take my student communications leader's word over whether a student should be accepted over another, over any DTS leader any day. Why? Because there is no one more experienced in the process of processing applications and talking to students on the phone and how to know what to identify in that process than that student communications leader. Even DTS leaders that have been a part of, yes, you've all been a part of those processes, but not every day for years. Like, they know every flag to spot and they know words that are said. And so you live and read this. So even as a leadership team person on Wire Newcastle, remove me from communications. There's no one I trust more with their decision about who should do a DTS or not than this person. I trust the DTS leader, yes. But there's no one I trust more than that. But Nathan, like I said, he's sitting there, he's a DTS leader. Does he approve and accept students? Absolutely, all the time. We just don't leave it to a school leader. So if the school leader's not available, that's our first choice. Like, if an application comes in for the July DTS, it goes straight to Nathan. Nathan's on holidays for a week. Hannah prays over that application and approves it. Yeah. We're not going to wait a week for Nathan to come back from holidays or a 3-month outreach that he's on and hopefully get a response and have him pray over it for him to come and do the DTS.
So it's a single person approving the application?
No, there's two.
Okay.
Yeah, there is two. But it can be, it can be multiple.
I'm just saying, like, you pray together or just by yourself.
Yeah. They mostly pray by themselves, but there is two people. Yeah. So there's always a check and balance there for sure. So oftentimes it's like and it's not just Hannah, there's other leaders, like Lorna can pray over an application. She's not the student communications leader, but there's certain ones that are trained and equipped and approved to approve application. I can approve an application. So I know what to look for. I know what I'm saying. And we started talking about this the other day. That goes into the whole other area of how we process applications and how they're not really doing what we think they're doing. So even the things we pinpoint as thinking we shouldn't accept them, we should accept them because they might actually be awesome. And the ones that we look at and go, we should accept them, they actually are nightmares, like as students. Looking at our application process, they're not always doing what we think we're doing. And that's where we need insight. That's where we need to pray, and there's the Holy Spirit. And sometimes that's where we get saved with different things. But for the most part, it's accept them all, and then deal with it from there. Not everyone needs to finish DTS. Not everyone needs to finish week 1 of DTS. Like, they can go home. If they don't want to grow, if they don't want to do anything, and they want to keep walking in rebellion, even if you give them a chance, whatever your processes are, they can go home. They can't argue themselves like, no, but I want to be here. Well then, so it's like we're trying to do that discipleship process before we actually know them. We're trying to make those decisions before we have any relationship with them. And often that relationship we have with them is like this paper application form that's come through, or online, we're looking right at as a leader or something, you're looking over this application, reading it, and you're like, this person looks like a great person, I want to accept them. But the words on the paper, their mom wrote, you just don't know. How many times is that? My roommate for 6.5 years in Newcastle, his mom filled out his application, he wasn't even a Christian. He got saved in like week 3. This is a guy that has led something like 14 DTSs around Wyoming. He's been leading Wyoming for 15, 16 years. He was not a Christian when he came. He should not have been approved, right?
when he answered those, like, what's your story of getting saved, or whatever, however you word the question, like, he couldn't have said that question, and you would have gone like, this school's maybe not for you, unless you want to let's talk on the phone and I'll lead you to the Lord, or something. That sort of thing. So, that's all part of the student journey process. It's important for you to wrestle through. I'm not here to say, this is how you should do it, but I'm just saying I'm saying these things that I want you, as you look at the student journey from when someone contacts you the day they arrive, you're considering this process, or you're asking some of these questions, and you're wrestling with these things. And ultimately, are you there to serve people versus are you primarily concerned with protecting yourself? An application process, and that's where I get that, because it's, from a communication standpoint, I know it's easy to go, well, you don't have to deal with the crap the DTS leader does, and I totally agree. I feel for the DTS leader, because I know some of the stuff. I'm a leader, I'm Newcastle was. In leadership, we have to deal with a lot of stuff. I know DTS leaders do. And so I get why that, because it's easy for a communications person to say, like, oh, just accept them and just do it. Like, so I get you may see that with me even saying that. And so I also have sympathy, if that's right, or empathy for a school leader or staff to say, like, well, we need some of these processes, like, we've just dealt with all these messes, and I totally agree. But I also just know that some of those processes aren't doing what you think they're doing. They're not necessarily, they're not actually protecting you from those messes. There's other things you can do to protect yourself from those. There's other processes you can put into place. You can get better at how you disciple people and how you, for lack of better words, kick people off ETS, that kind of stuff. Like just knowing when. So I think our training has just gotten, Sarah McCutcheon leads our training in Newcastle, it's just gotten a lot better at developing really good processes for how we deal with these issues and these people, and not finishing DTSs and not going on outreaches and stuff. And so more people than ever before in history of why Newcastle have not passed DTS. And that's a good thing. So I think we passed some people that should not have been passed. They did not want to grow, and they didn't care, and they were nightmares on outreach, and they still even didn't really repent from that, but we just want to make sure everyone passes. And she's just gotten better at that. Or they actually have health issues that we can't just keep babying them and hope they get through kind of thing just because we want them to pass. Like, let them do another lecture phase. Let them, like, we've had multiple people do 2 lecture phases in a row, then go on outreach because they just needed more time. That's okay. That's the most loving thing for the person to develop those processes. Same with finances and all these things within it. She's done a great job at it. But develop those processes into versus don't make the process before you make the decision necessarily that you can give them a chance. If we didn't give Levi, my roommate, a chance, he would not be doing what he's doing today. He might not know Jesus as well. Any questions on that stuff? Once again, I'm talking away, so make this. That's a good question. So this is what we want. Any questions on how we do the student journey, basically? This is what it's supposed to be about. We want to show you something.
Get into the phone calls?
Yeah, so I can take a section and talk about how we make the phone calls. Yeah.
So do you ideally contact the person like with a phone call right away as they filled in the form,
Yeah. Because the thing with
that
that is,
shocking, I guess, if you were filling in like 5 seconds later you get the phone call.
it can be, once again, it can be initially for a person, but then they have the most amazing phone.
Yeah.
And so they forget that very quickly. The reason, basically, the longer the time goes by, the less likely it is you'll get a hold of them. Because the more they'll forget about it, or the more those to ignore it or not. Like, so the more time that elapses from when someone inquires. The thing is if someone inquires and you get, say, a notification on your computer or whatever your system is, you pretty much have a 100% call success rate if you call right away. Why? Because you know they're available.
Yeah.
Secondly, you know they're thinking about it. So even because if you call them 3 days later, sometimes they even forget like why they inquired. They're like, oh yeah, I remember seeing something like that, and they totally forget the questions they like. But when it's fresh in their mind, they're reading your website, and they're available and it's fresh. They've got the questions in their mind. They're wondering about why I'm in that moment. So when you talk to them, they're much more like onto it. So even time zones get erased in those moments to our team. Because we'll get an inquiry from Denver, Colorado, and it's the afternoon in the US, and we're going to ourselves, that's 1 in the morning. They're awake. Call them up. So our guys will just call them, and they'll 100% success rate pretty much. Once a couple hours goes by, the success rate just starts to plummet, and you have to call them like 7 times before you ever get hold of them. Because then they're at work, then they're on the toilet, then they're sleeping, then they're... So it's not that they don't want to talk to you, there's just these technicalities that they just happen to be busy. Regardless of the sleep section of the day, they're doing lots of things. People have lives, right? But when they're inquiring on the computer, they're obviously not busy. I mean, maybe they're in class and they're doing it on their phone, so that's a possibility. So that's maybe why it's a 99% success rate, not 100%. But that's why I don't necessarily like the term, like, we try to get back to people within 24 hours. Because that means if someone inquires, you can kind of like put them on a list of people and get to them eventually within that 24-hour period. So we try to train our team that even though you've got a massive list of people to call, if a new one comes in right that moment, it jumps to the top of the priority list. So we try to create systems that do that. Where you can be so busy doing your job, calling people, that someone's knocking on the door right next to you saying, I want to do a DTS, ready to talk to you, but you're busy with your to-do list. So we kind of give that picture to our call team as best we can. So it's like if an inquiry were coming right now, I would say step out of the room and go make the call. Because you calling them and them coming to missions is more important than me sitting here and talking to you. We try to create those priorities. If you can create systems where you rotate people, where you even, I know towns really tried this for a while, like David had people with like a wireline, like a base mobile phone, that they would be like on a shift one night, month or something. So if an inquiry came through at 10 o'clock at night, you go in and make the call just then. That's what I mean, just try things like that. If you're really struggling to get students, if it's critical, you gotta fight for it. Like these are some of the things you should just try and try to do. Whether it's a team thing, doing a night thing or not. It's just like, because you're gonna get a lot of inquiries that come through in the middle of the night or when you're eating dinner or that kind of thing. Like, are you interruptible? Is there some kind of structure to do that? But I'm not also advocating for you should just work 24/7 and be stressed all the time. You have to make calls. You can rotate that around your team. What if you take one evening a month? It's like, that's still amazing. And the next person takes another evening. I don't know, stuff like that you can do. Yeah. But that timing question is an important one. Because the other question that gets out is how many times should I try to call someone before we give up on them, kind of thing. And I don't like to put a number to that. It's just like, just keep trying. And like, if you attempt to make a call in the morning and they don't pick up, maybe call 2 hours later. Because then they might be done their 1 hour toilet break they were in. But you just don't know. I think we sometimes especially, so many of us, myself, we struggle with rejection, right? So it's like, when they don't pick up, you think they don't want to talk to you. It's like, no, most of the time, they're just busy. Their phone's on silent or whatever it was. So it's like, or they don't, most people like yourself, I'm sure, you don't recognize the number, so you don't pick up. But if that number called you 4 times, maybe you give it a go. Even just to tell them to stop calling them. But you think it's a telemarketer. But then you realize what it is, and you have this great conversation. So most of the time, they're busy or they don't recognize the number.
Do you DTS in functions? So for non-verbals, how do you give a quick definition of DTS?
It all has to do with, I think, sometimes, it has to do with context too, and this is where some of the, for those of you making calls, you'll be using a platform called HubSpot. Within that, it's important to know who you're calling. So it's not a list of just names that are interested in DTS, it's a list of names who have contacted you through various advertisements and forums and different parts of the student journey. So if it's someone that contacted you through YWAM.org, they know more about YWAM, so you can assume a bit more like, oh yeah, how'd you hear about YWAM? And let's even talk DTS. They already know about it. They've been on YWAM.org. If they contact you through some blog or ad or something that's really broad, talking about take a Christian gap year. They might not know you about Wyoming, so when you talk to them on the phone, you want to say like, have you heard anything about Wyoming before? I saw you were interested in taking a Christian gap year. Like, can I share more about what Wyoming is? You need to bring them that context in the phone call. So that's where HubSpot helps you kind of give some sort of idea of why they're contacting you. Not always crazy clear, but when it's not clear, you need to lead the conversation in that way. Be asking, do you understand what it is, and not use DTS. Do you know what a DTS is? Do you know what a discipleship training school is? Stuff like that. I mean, I can point that out. Did you notice what her language she was using in that video? She said discipleship training school every single time. Because it was just clear that she was doing a school, a course. She did this 6-month thing called a discipleship training school. Not I did a DTS. What is it? Is a DTS a 3-hour seminar? I don't know. There's no sense of what it is. It's just like I said, Chinese. So she said, especially on a video, you can't, like on text, you could do discipleship training school and then have in parentheses DTS, and then later in the paragraph, you could just say DTS and a reader's brain gets it. But on a video, you could say discipleship training school and 5 minutes later say DTS. And it's Chinese still. So you notice she said every single time. That was not a mistake. I know it wasn't. Because the guy that makes these videos, his brother-in-law, he knows this stuff, and he does this really well. When he does interviews, he catches them and says, would you mind saying discipleship training school, or would you mind not using that word and explain it, just so it's clearer to the people we're speaking to. So we want our testimony to be able to reach as many people as possible. So it's the same, how we make our phone calls. We've been, especially with locations that we've been trying to, like I said, branch out more into the ocean more. We're having to train and even retrain some of the call teams where they're getting more and more inquiries from people that never heard about YWAM. They're having to change the way they make their phone calls. I did a whole new phone call training for the guys in Mazatlan when I was just there, because they're getting more and more people that have never heard of YWAM before. And I'm needing to like teach them not to like say, hey, this is so-and-so from YWAM Mazatlan. I heard you're interested in a DTS. Do you have any questions? That sentence is not a real sentence. Don't say that. You can say that to your friend that's interested, that knows a bit about it or whatever it is, like, but you can't say that as your first opening line. And once again, it's not like the end of the world if you say that, because you start a phone call to explain it. So I'm not saying like you just ruined it, but it's just training ourselves with that language to host that conversation in a way that helps them understand and doesn't make them feel like they're not in the cool in club that understands what it is, that they're not weird or something, or they think you're weird. And so, yeah, hopefully that, for the most part. I mean, I know your main question is, well, how do you explain DTS? Which this is basically at the core. You want to know how we make phone calls? It's a sharp one, isn't it? Get him on the phone. The core of how we make a phone call, I don't think I'm necessarily the best at making phone calls myself, or I wouldn't be the one that I'd pick to train people to make phone calls either. Robbie was really brilliant at running those seminars on how to make phone calls. Hannah, who leads the team, she's better than me at this. It's all she does. It's not all I do. But I do know the core pieces of it. Now there's the prayer piece, which I'll touch on. The first piece, which is how you describe a DTS, discipleship training school. The best way to explain a discipleship training school is just to tell them to just do it. That might work with some people. And in the phone call, you should say, oh yeah, you should just do it. But the best way to explain and make it clear what a discipleship training school is with a person is to share your testimony. And what I find is for most phone calls, when I overhear phone calls, most phone calls revolve around what a DTS is. Not what will God do in your life on a DTS. So most people describe a DTS as, it's a 6-month program where you do 3 months of lectures learning topics like hearing God's voice, the Holy Spirit, that's the information of what a DTS is. Then you'll go on an overseas outreach, it'll cost this much money, start dates, you could possibly go on an overseas outreach serving with these ministries in these countries, blah, 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 blah. That is once again right. It's what the DTS is. It's not what a DTS is. It's not what you remember about a DTS. And it's not why I want to do a DTS. I don't want to go sit in class. Young people don't. Young people don't just, it's not just about the outreach. They do want to do these things, but I'm saying, oh, and obviously you also explain about work duties, all that kind of stuff. And we have work duties in the afternoon, and maybe do your work duties students do anything on the farm? Maybe you'll work on the farm, or you'll do this, or you do that. There's all this stuff that you explain about what basically the program of a DTS is. Now the program helps facilitate what makes a DTS good, but it's not what makes a DTS good. What makes it for fruitful and successful. And when you think about your DTS, what is it? So when we train our guys on making phone calls, we don't just give them a generic, this is what you say, here's the script. I'm going to ask you individually to tell me what was it about DTS that changed your life. If you were to pick one thing, now God may have done 50 things. Sorry, what's your name? Yeah. Elena?
Yeah.
Say Irina.
Irina? What did God do on your DTS in your life? If you could just pick one thing, what's the main thing that just changed your life?
God is so personally and really sees what's in my heart, like all wounds that needed healing and stuff, including God healing, right? Because I'm still in process.
So that's not what God did on someone else's life, it's what God did in your life, right? God does that in a lot of people's lives. That's how you explain the DTS. Your testimony, what God did in your life, that you heard God for the first time, and how that's led to you doing this, this, and this. Like, what is your testimony? What is your story? That's what young people are desiring. They're not desiring more structure, more schedule, more school. They're desiring God to change their life. To, like what Lorna was saying, they're desiring to tell people about Jesus. So maybe it's your story is like this testimony on outreach where it could be like, yeah, you overcame fear of man, and you went up to a complete stranger, and you prayed for them, and they were healed, or we all have something like that. Maybe you didn't pray for someone and their arm grew back. I've never heard that. But maybe it happened to you, or it's not about it's what is your story, what is your testimony. And so we try to draw that out of people and get them to practice, like we do with outreach, like practice your testimony. You get better at it and really focus in on what is and you might have a few different ones you can use with people, but it's like really go, and we get them to actually write it down and practice it, so it's not just like you rambling on the phone kind of thing, and it doesn't change every single phone call, like, oh yeah, my DTS was fun and this, but like actually, once again, we're trying to, if you want to get better at communicating and better at phone calls, the best way to do that is just do it, keep practicing it, keep doing it, you're going to get really good at communicating your testimony. The best way to describe a DTS is to share what God did in your life, and people will go, I want God to do the same thing in my life. How many people would want what God did in Lauren's life to happen? And that's what she was sharing, like the amount of people she's been able to share her testimony with that are also struggling with anxiety and attacks and stuff, that she's been able to encourage and see come do a DTS. It's awesome.
So do you then first try to figure out where they're at in their life so that you can kind of choose a story or a testimony that fits? Because talking about to a person that...
Yeah, what's I going to say? It's not necessarily like some perfect script. Like you can, sometimes it's hard because they might not be super talkative, or you might ask a question, like trying to draw it out. They don't really say much, and so that's what we teach our guys on phones. We'll then just basically say, hey, would you mind if I took a moment to just share about what God did in my life on my discipleship training school, kind of thing. But they often do start the conversation, obviously asking them questions even along the lines of, well, how did you hear about YWAM, or what interests you about missions, or why would you want to get involved in this, that kind of stuff, and then you kind of can draw out in the conversation, stuff like that. when I was sharing yesterday about like, yeah, if there's someone who's really interested in wanting to take a gap year between university and high school, or take a break from university for a bit, you can also obviously shape the way you share your testimony. My testimony during the DTS can be told as a purely gap year testimony, even though it wasn't. I didn't call it a gap year testimony, but it really was at its core about taking time to grow my relationship with the Lord, so I could hear Him and include Him in the process of what He wanted me to do next in my life, which I was originally assuming was university, which would have been fine if God had let me do that, but He didn't. And so you can share your testimony in those contexts with people, in bits and pieces. But every phone call is so different because every person is different. So you'll learn, and you'll get better at it and practice at it. There's no such thing as a perfect phone call. But there's nothing you know more than your own story and your own testimony. So that's going to be the best thing that you can communicate. So that's what I said. And then the second part, the final part of it, like I said, is we always, as much as we can, we offer to be able to pray for people on the phone. And in some of those instances, like I've shared, it's like also, I mean, one of the things that while I was really, really good at is walking in the prophetic and getting words for people and stuff like that, hearing God for people, that kind of thing. So there's obviously wisdom in how you do that and what you share, and you're still growing in that. Maybe sometimes there's things you shouldn't share, but like this, obviously I think it's worth taking the risks still. Like I said with that story, that girl, because she took the moment to like hear God and go like, God, what do you have for this girl? It changed a phone call that seemed like a rejection into a girl who liked Jesus. So sharing your testimony is one thing, yes, but also that thing of praying and hearing God for people and stuff like that is all included in there. That's been like you saw, it's one of the big feedbacks is people are like, it was the fact that you prayed for me and encouraged me, and that's regardless of them choosing to do it, saying like, yes, I'm going to do a DTS. They might say, yes, I'm going to do something else, and you pray for them, and that's going to mark them, because it's not normal. Probably, even at their church or in their friend circles, like none of their friends are stopping and saying like, hey, I know you're struggling with this, can I pray for you? Even in Christian circles, that's not that important. So that's why they're just like, whoa, they want that, so they want to go be a part of something like that. And so but it's often the first time you experience it. It's so normal for you, living in a wild community. It's not normal for the people you're calling at all. So don't take that for granted, what you've got there, that gift. So, for the most part, that's how we make phone calls. We make lots of phone calls. Like I said, whether you're using something like HubSpot or not, we always make sure before we make the call to take a look at any past conversations they might have had with people, or emails, or where they cut any information we have in HubSpot that can just help us be better prepared to make the phone call. That way we're not asking the same questions that the person that called in 3 days earlier asked. So we can help manage that. And we can also kind of get an idea of the sort of like what part of the student journey they're in. We're not calling someone who's actually halfway through the application process, but for some reason we think they're going to be inquiring. Like, I heard you're interested in Wyoming. Like, yeah, I just booked my flight. I'm coming next week. Oh, sorry, wrong call. That stuff kind of thing that happens. So being prepared before you make the call. And then, like I said, focusing on story. And in that, I say, yes, you're still asking them if they have any questions about DTS, and you're still telling them about the program. So once again, I'm not like saying you don't say it 6 months, and you don't say the lectures and the topics, and you're going to share all that. The primary focus is on sharing your testimony, your story, what God did during those 6 months. Practicing that, getting good at that. And then also praying for people at the end. And then also I'd say the final thing, which has been one, it's easy I think sometimes because I'm encouraging, like, oh, share your testimony and pray for people, and it can just turn into this very, like, it's very easy for student communications to turn into like, oh, it's this really nice ministry we're doing. We're ministering to people, and yes, we're discipling people, but then you forget the number one thing you're doing is mobilizing people with missions. You don't actually ever ask them to consider doing a DTS. You pray for them, encourage them, they're a little unsure, they're like unsure, and you're like, okay, that's nice, I'll just pray for you. Let me know if you're interested. But actually like even challenge them, like, hey, you should really pray about it. Let me call you in a few days and see if you're interested, if God said anything about doing a DTS, or whatever, like you actually giving a call, saying, I think you should consider doing a DTS. I think this would be really great for you. Because I think a DTS is great for everyone, regardless if they're doing missions. Doesn't mean everyone has to do a DTS, but I think a DTS is for everyone. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think it's for anyone, regardless of sphere or calling. Oh, I'm not called to missions. Okay, I still think a DTS would be awesome. Even if you're going to go to college, or you're going to become a doctor, or whatever it is, it could be a great foundation to launch you into that sphere. So encouraging people in that and saying, I think you should do it. You should really seriously consider it. If they still really don't think so, and they really feel like God wants them to just go straight and do this or do that, be like, that's awesome too. Go do it. Let me pray for you. So it's not like one or the other, but I'm just saying that we also need to be unapologetic that we want people to join missions and do a DTS.
Mark already touched on it, but should it be the same person that is in communication with like another person, or is it okay that like they're receiving communication from so many people that it's a lot to like?
Yeah, it's yes and no. It's like it's better that we contact them than be so overly committed that it's got to be the exact person. It's kind of like the DTS leader has to approve the application. It's kind of like, well, what if they're on outreach for months or they're on holidays? It's like we just all of a sudden stop communicating. So this is where it's nice where it's DTS teams, because yes, you may have one DTS staff that's calling a certain person over and over again, but then they go on holidays and put another DTS staff on that team call them. Yeah, like they get to know the entire DTS staff team. And I would encourage like a school leader to call all of them and get to meet all of them kind of thing. It's like you're able to, it's actually also beneficial that they have conversations with multiple people, because they're going to hear multiple testimonies and get multiple perspectives on stuff. No one person knows everything about why we're in DTS and all the stuff. So it's like it's really good to even for you to go, like if you're having a conversation with someone, you might hear something from them, and you might know someone on the staff that has a really great testimony for them, knows more information, and you can say like, oh, actually, there's this one person I'd love for you to hear. Would you want to talk to them? And talk to them. So it's not like, oh, this is my assigned person. But that's also good, because as much as you can. And they've done that in Mazatlan and a few places where, like, even getting DTS students to make phone calls, like during work duty time. In Australia, it doesn't really work because it's a bad time to make phone calls, time zone wise. But in the afternoons, Mazatlan will have some of their students come and make some phone calls. And the reason being is because, like, students are actually really good at making phone, not necessarily all the phone calls, they don't know everything about it, but they have real, live, in-the-moment testimonies of what God's doing. This is what God's teaching me this week in this DTS. I'm a current DTS student. Also, you can, if say it's a Colombian calling and you don't have someone who can call that person who's Colombian, if there's a Colombian on your DTS, get them to call them. It's better. So if you have someone from Amsterdam who's inquiring, and you have someone here who's Dutch, see if they can call them, like, if they can. But if they can't, if they're not available and there's no one on your team, still call them, remember, right away, kind of thing. And if they can call them later and share, or another one of those phone calls, that's good too. So there's always like these like ultimate better scenarios that would be perfect, and those are good when you can have them. But ultimately, the number one thing is that you do communicate. That's the first hurdle you have to get over, and actually just do it, make the phone calls, not sit around and wait for the Dutch person to make the phone call or the Colombian to make the phone call. Just make the phone call. Yeah. How are we looking for time? Yeah.
You kind of mentioned it, but would you wait a few days until they call back, or how? What's that process?
If you've spoken with them or not spoken with them. Yes. Once again, it depends on the individual.
What was the question?
If you've spoken with someone, so you've had a conversation with someone, when do you call them back? Second time. Kind of thing. So is it like, or a third time or a fourth time? I think because it comes back to, it depends on the individual. Like, so it might, but we always, that's a good piece, because I didn't say that. In all of our phone calls, we always finish the phone call by saying, would it be all right if I called you next week to see how things are going. Something like along that line. And so I think a week is sometimes good, but it depends on the person. Because it's like if they're in their first year of high school, they've inquired, and they can't do an ETS for 3 years or something. You don't necessarily need to call them every week. But you could put them down and be like, hey, would you mind if we called you in a few months and saw you're going, or even in a few years, and you had them down with a scheduled call for 3 years that can come up for something, let's say, and call them when they were you wouldn't want to call them when they were done high school, but maybe in their last year of high school, or whatever, when they were getting closer to actually making a real decision, that you give them a call. So there's that extreme, and then there's the ones who are like, yeah, I'm thinking about applying right now, and you can say, like, would you mind if I called you tomorrow, or in 3 days, or something. I think you will start to know that better for yourself in each phone call. That's why, once again, I've never personally loved making policy out of some of those things, because I think then you end up in a system that doesn't serve that individual necessarily. I know there can be an extreme with it, where you never do anything, but where it's just totally loose and do whatever you want to call it. We kind of give general guidelines, like I said, like, hey, would you mind if I called you next week and saw where you're at? But if you've had a specific phone call and you get a sense that this person's right on the break, and you're like, maybe they're needing to go on the phone call, or maybe you need to go or something and finish up the phone call, and you're like, oh, I just want to make sure I finish it, we can't finish the conversation now, like, hey, would you mind if I called you tomorrow when you got off the break?
I know you use this quote for reference to phone calls. And why phone calls is so important, but I also think it comes down to, like, if the person's praying about their call emissions and they're trying, like, then you can say, hey, why don't you pray about it and I'll get a hold of you in 3 days, and then it makes it sound like, whoa, this person actually wants me to pray and get an answer. I'm giving a very direct form of communication here. I'm making a very clear ask. Whereas if they're like, I'm just trying to raise support and I've been calling around, then it's kind of like, I'll be praying for you on that, let me get back to you in 2 weeks. Because then it's not like I have to get back to you tomorrow to figure out if you're going to raise support. It's more like, let me check in with you as we go. So I think it comes down to what it is. If you're trying to get them to make it, to hear God or make a decision, then you want to engage them more if it's more like.
I mean, the same comes with applicants, as we're talking about, like, people who are new to contacting. If someone's applying, the application was to go, how often we should call someone? Well, some people they need a bit more discipleship, but they just need a bit more help. They've never applied for a passport before in their lives. They've never traveled before in their lives. And there's some people who are just like, they got everything sorted. Like, they're sweet. That doesn't mean you don't call them, but like they're like definitely coming, and they don't need necessarily as much help. So you're just going to call them and it depends on how far out. Say you're 9 months out from an ETS, you don't need to call, someone wouldn't have needed to call me, for example, once a week. But it would have been nice to, every month or 2 months even, or something, like to get a call and just see how I'm going and pray for me, like quickly, get to know me a bit more, once again, like that relationship. So even within processing ETS applications, phone calls are critical and important. They shouldn't just be responses to someone needs to get formal, therefore I'll call them. You should be calling them first, and within those conversations, see do they need any more help with their application or more forms. Then you can get that along. There are people that, we need to call every week because we're still processing things, we're trying to get the forms through, all this kind of stuff. But they just need to have their hand held a little bit more. There's obviously an extreme of that too, when maybe it's a bit too much. And you're like, I can't do this for you, we're not going to fly you here, kind of thing. But help people, like serve people as much as you can.
If you notice that they're not interested in ETS or missions, and you still keep in touch with them, because I guess there will be also people calling that just only just need someone.
Yeah, that definitely happens. And once again, that's up to you're figuring that out on your phone call. Like if you get that, we'll either set them as like a whatever it's called, a cold lead or something, so it doesn't end up on getting called again, or you can put notes, don't call again. If they're like actually calling to harass you for some reason, not that ever happens, but we've had occasions with a few weird phone calls that you might get. That's someone even just like a past disgruntled YWAM or something that's wanting to harass YWAM cases. Very rare. But if it were to happen, it's that kind of thing. You want to make sure the system says don't call this person again. So whatever your system is set up to do that. why it's good to have people that work full time and really own and get this place. They start to learn and know this really well. Versus if it's just someone coming in making a call, they might not be able to read that really well, and they end up on 3-hour-long phone calls. Which comes to the point, I mean, we work, that's another part of how we make phone calls, is you've got to, because it can just lead into, like you said, people are lonely and no one's having conversations like this before and stuff like that. And you're just an amazing young person that you're talking to. There's also an art to getting off the phone that you have to learn. I'm not saying I know what that art form is, but like whether it's saying like, oh, hey, I've got a few more things I need to get to, but it's been great talking to you. Would you mind if one of our team give you a call next week to see where you're at with designing your ETS? And that's why, Phil's saying, in kind of making that call, that might kind of make it black and white for them, and they go like, oh, I'm not actually interested, but I'd love a call next week. Well, we don't need to give a call. That sort of thing. So. But that still does happen. It's still, even when people are interested, like, if you really know this person's right on the brink, an hour-long phone call is okay, but if they're not, it's still very 50-50, just phone call should only really be like 20 minutes. It shouldn't be that long. So that's where even you've got to practice your testimony. If your testimony is taking 45 minutes to share, because you're just rambling and you're really practicing, and you're sharing like all the 50 things God did on your DTS, which is normal, like we all do that. That's just a lack of preparation, a lack of like actually practicing your communication. So that comes into phone calls. It's like practice your phone calls with each other. Figure it out. But yeah, we do get a lot of phone calls like that.
What if they just need help for like recent support, bring off Sunday going to work?
Yeah.
You still like help them out. Like, where's the line? Like, just if they're interested in DPS, you keep on contact with them.
Yeah, basically. Well, we'll say like in that case, it's like saying like, oh, we got some great resources on our blog or YouTube channel. Go check it out. But we're not going to be free fundraising training for them if they're not actually like. That's for people who are applying to do the DTS that we focus on. So I mean, yeah. But I mean, there are cases like with any application forms and stuff where people might be telling you they are interested just so they can get that information and drag it out. Once again, there's no way for you to know every motive and intention of someone. Because even you get people, like I said, in that testimony, like who are not interested whatsoever, and that person could have just been like, okay, bye, or prayed a nice prayer and said, okay, bye, and then looked in HubSpot and said, don't call this person again, they're not interested in missions, they're doing a college degree. But she prayed for them and was willing to share that word. It's something you've only got 3 applications. Are you fighting for that? And I don't see that in our teams sometimes. They're just like, make calls. Make nice calls. I don't mean fighting just by working harder or making more calls. Even like, are you praying? Are you believing? Like, we're not seeing what God's called us to do. But they see the applications. Now, ultimately, the response you're after is students arriving. But that's only measurable every time an ETS starts. So yes, you're also responsible with the whole team for that, the students that are sitting on the seats. But something that's measurable that you're being successful every single day is whether or not people are applying every single day. If people aren't applying every single day, why are you doing what you're doing? You could say, oh, we're ministering to people, encouraging people, all this stuff. It's like, yeah, that's all great, but that's not why you're doing what you're doing. That's just an added benefit. That's awesome. So if you forget that, you just become, well, we'll go start a phone call ministry, which would be awesome, but that's not what this is. And that's actually not why they contacted you. They contacted you to learn more about Wyoming. They contacted you because they're interested in being mobilized into missions. And so you're not stewarding that well if you're treating it differently and using it for your own motivation or your own thing, even if that's really a nice thing. So.
Which I think comes in balance. I mean, you might make 3 phone calls and not really push application because that's not the direction that it's going, and that person's really far away. And so I think it's just knowing where they're at, but knowing that that's where you're coming back to in the end. Yeah. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe you should go a phone call without mentioning.
I mean, you didn't, I'm not, because once again, I'm not saying that if you went an entire day and no one wanted to apply, you failed. Or you made 100 phone calls failed. No, not at all. I'm not saying that. But because the next day you might make 100 phone calls and 99 of them pick up and 80 of them apply. So it's like, because you're not responsible for the other person's actions. But it is your goal, is what you're hoping for, and you're going to constantly see what you can do to do better at that, and you're going to make the phone call, but that's still your goal that people would apply. So you don't, like, because I know sometimes our team will get discouraged because they made 13 call attempts and no one was picking up. And the person next to them made 13 phone calls and 10 people picked up. It's like, was that person doing better? Were they better at making phone calls? No, they just happened to get the right phone numbers in front of them on HubSpot. Like, it was like a luck of the draw. But then the next day it's opposite. And so it is kind of, you've got, it's not just daily, like it's even in the week or the month, and like where are things at as a whole, as a team as well. And it's always interesting to see, like, even looking at our applications in the month, looking at who made their first phone calls, you can sometimes see, like, specific people are actually really good at that. And they get people to apply. So we can learn things from those people as well. There'll be people in this room that are just really gifted at getting people that they've got. Do you guys do strengths finders here? Some of that, yeah. One of the strengths finder strengths, which my wife has, and one of my good friends, Stevie, has, is woo. It's a really good strength to have in this area. There's two main strengths that, doesn't mean you don't have these in your top 5, I don't have either, but you can't be really good at this, but I'm saying it's been interesting to look at Basel and Newcastle, because all of our staff do strengths finders as part of staff training. That you've got staff that have woo and communication. They're excellent people to put on the phone. Do you have woo? Get on the phone. I know you would be great on the phone.
How do you call foreigners? Do you ever do like Skype or FaceTime or something like that?
Yeah, I mean Skype, once again, Skype and FaceTime they are phone calls, so you can't do it. I think that's probably more effective in the application process or with relationship, because I know I wouldn't necessarily want to FaceTime with my first point of contact. Like, that's even more intrusive than a phone call, so I don't think the young person's going to answer a FaceTime with a random stranger. But maybe you can try that. But it's still a phone call, so I think that our guys have done that a little bit. It's mostly the applicants, they'll FaceTime numbers, things like that. Or they'll do like Facebook Lives or things like that, where they can invite all the students to, and they'll introduce all the staff in person and do a little tour of the base. As much of that kind of stuff that's more of a DTS leader, DTS team initiative type stuff. So we encourage them to do stuff like that before they arrive. Once again, it's all stuff that's going to help improve on that part of the process. Yeah. If you're wondering what woo is, woo are those kinds of people that just have this knack that can basically, it's not that they say woo a lot, they have this knack that they can basically convince you of doing anything. They will somehow if they want you to do something, they'll somehow get you to do it. Sometimes it's annoying and you think you don't want them.
No, I know, yeah.
But that's the negative side. It can be every strength there's the negative and there's the positive about working with it. Totally. So every strength has it.
There's a persuasion element to it, but a big piece of it is they love talking to lots of people.
Yeah.
And so they can have the same conversation with like 100 people, and they just enjoy new people and
they love meeting new people in the party. It's like parties.
It's the opposite of somebody that's like gets anxious around a stranger or a new person. Like I walk in a room, we're like, I want to talk to as many people as I can in this room. I want to go talk to him. I've never talked to him.
For me, one of my top strengths is relator, which is not the opposite, but it's the opposite end of the spectrum in that, is that, like, if I walk into a room full of people, I'd rather just sit down with one person and have a more meaningful conversation. That's not better work, it's the different strengths, giftings, kind of thing. And there's negatives to each strength. The negative for me is that, I don't actually go and meet a lot of people, or there can be fear of man in that. There's all that kind of, and there's stuff like that. There's the negative sides of it, but then there's the positives for sure. And there's negatives to the woo. They never really go deep with people, or they don't have, but he does. But it's I'm just saying, in general, the strengths can be like that. Try not to. My friend Stevie can just get anyone with anything. Like he was great going around getting like sponsorships from businesses with our youth ministry or whatever it was. Like you wanted him to go. He's really great at fundraising. He was really great at campaigns or whatever it was. Like he's really good at woo. And my wife is the same thing. So it's good.
so much for sharing with us, and thank you guys for sticking around and hanging out. I know it's been a long morning. Hopefully it's been inspiring and encouraging. And if you guys have extra questions or you want to come up and ask Daniel something, then he'll be here for a little bit. But want to honor your time. Thank you for being here all morning. It's lunchtime. We'll get some food, and yeah, we'll continue this conversation this week. And if you guys have any inspiration to come to, the conversation's open, and we're in the process of this space.
It's not open this afternoon, though.
Yeah.
We need to get with it.
We're getting work. Thanks, Dan.
I hope that as you're sitting here at the test, I feel like I hope that you're excited for September 2019. I hope that you get a better understanding of why I keep saying I see the pieces of the puzzle coming together for growth. It's not just fancy words. Okay. I just want to say that you were great today.